An entitled jerk tries to force me out of business by suing me into oblivion, all because I broke up the monopoly he had in our area. But as a result, I won every single case this guy brought against me, leaving me and my fiance with a massive payout after he had to settle for a huge amount of money. Here's what happened. I'm 26 years old and I decided to open my own business this year. Moving forward in this post, I should point out that I am in a small town of maybe 1,000 people in the rural Midwest. Because of this, everyone has some sort of connection with somebody. We went to one of the liquor stores in the closest city 30 minutes away, which is a small city of about 8,000 people, and when we were grabbing some alcohol for a party, I was looking at the prices and I saw how insane the prices were. For a 6-pack of local beer, we were charged $15. Now, I was thinking about this and figured that I could probably make bank opening a liquor store. Back in February, I was furious about my awful job and thinking out loud how cool it would be to own my own business to a friend. My friend's mom happened to be the president of the local bank, and they told me, hey, with the pandemic, the bank has been struggling to find customers to give out loans. Right now, the bank is giving loans for cheap. A couple of weeks later, I went in and met with my friend's mom and pitched my idea with the research I had done on alcohol prices, potential demand, and estimated income. So then, as a result, I got a loan at a fantastic interest rate. After that, I bought a building, which happened to be the former bank, and hired my dad to help me renovate the building. My dad is a general contractor, and he gave me an excellent quote on materials and labor. After working everything out with the distributors, getting the proper license, and getting my paperwork I needed for the government, I was ready to open my liquor store in May. I had started taking out ads in the local newspaper advertising my store and my prices. When I was in talks with my distributor, I learned, even with inflation and everything else, the liquor stores in the city had like an 80% markup. I talked to a local business owner, and he suggested that I have around a 35% to a 40% markup. Because of this, I was significantly cheaper than the closest liquor store and had a much wider selection than the gas stations and small local stores nearby. Now, my hometown is near a national forest. As such, we have a ton of people who come up for weekends for recreational activities year-round. My first week, and that being the week before Memorial Weekend, right after opening, I had made $4,000 in profit, and it was great being my own boss. If someone was rude to me or my girlfriend, I would just say, oh, you could do business elsewhere. If someone says something awful about my girlfriend's ethnicity, well, they can pay me 15% more at the register. Did the gang and I run out of alcohol? Well, time to grab my keys and go to the store and get some more. That's not to say that it wasn't difficult running my own business, especially that my only employee was my girlfriend, and we were both working 6 or 7 10 to 12-hour days a week. I was both manager, accountant, and cashier. But man, it's so much nicer knowing I can tell someone to pound sand for being a jerk. But trust me, all of our troubles were just beginning, as things took a turn in a way that I honestly never expected. A couple of weeks after Memorial Day, some old guy walks into my store a couple of minutes after I opened. He seemed friendly enough, but eventually he offered to buy my store. I'm not going to say the amount, but it wouldn't have even covered my principal on the loan. I then rejected the proposal outright and refused to negotiate the sum any higher. He then walked out of my store and said, well, you'll be sorry you rejected that offer. The next month, a guy walked into my store and asked if I was the owner. After saying yes, I was informed that my business was being sued by this random guy I never heard of for libel. After he left, I was freaking out, and I decided that I was going to close early. When I got home, I Googled the guy, and I soon saw a picture of the guy that tried to buy my store. It turns out that that is the guy who owns both the liquor stores in the nearby city. It also just so happens that he is on city council. With a little bit further digging, I learned that this city has an ordinance that reads, any business institution that does not fulfill the definition of a restaurant, a tavern, or liquor dispensary will be excluded from obtaining a license for the sale of alcohol. Later, I discovered that the same guy happens to be the head of the board which approves liquor license. And honestly, I just love small town corruption. Either way, I had a major issue. My maternal uncle happens to be a lawyer in a neighboring state, so I decided to call him and try and get some kind of legal advice. I talked to him and I read the documents that I had been handed and served over the phone and the research that I had done. After receiving all of the information I had read off, I was expecting to get some kind of advice, but instead I heard him say, hang on, I've got to make a call. And he then hung up. At this point, I'm freaking out, and I was about to post online to try and figure things out in another place, and honestly, I just kind of wanted someone to tell me that it was going to be okay, and that I didn't need to crawl to this guy on my hands and knees. Well, eventually my uncle called me back. He said to me, hey, I just got off the phone with my partner, and he agreed that we can take your case pro bono. If you would like to accept, we can discuss this at my office tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Well, this is how I learned that my uncle is on the bar in 3 different states. So we meet and we discuss the case, and it turns out that the guy filed a libel suit against my business based on the ads I took out in the local newspapers. He claimed that my ads were targeted to damage his reputation and his business's reputation. There were a few other things that I had no idea what was being referenced, but my uncle told me that we would win this case no problem. Well, 3 weeks later and the case is dismissed. But after that, my uncle says the following: people like that piece of work will likely try to file another suit against you, and if that happens, call me and I promise I will help. Well, the very next day I got served again, but this time I am the defendant. And this is not about my store, but instead it's me. I swear to God, I look at the documentation and the only thing that changed was instead of my business's name, mine is listed as the defendant. And this is literally the same thing that happens before, because 4 weeks later the case is dismissed. And over the next 3 months, I was sued just as many times. Before the 5th case's hearing, we had a settlement meeting. My uncle, the judge, the guy suing me, his lawyer, a bailiff, and I were all sitting in this room. The judge says, "You two have been in court 4 times already. Is there any way we could come to an agreement that will stop this cycle of faulty litigation?" The guy's lawyer then says they have an offer and hand it to my uncle, who then hands it to me. It essentially reads that he'll stop all litigation if I sell my business for about 30% of the remaining loan principal. I then outright rejected the offer and made a counteroffer instead. I said, "If you drop this case, I won't sue you for harassment." He then busts out laughing. "Sue me? With what money? The legal fees alone ought to have drained you. You should be happy I chose to extend this offer and not sue you into bankruptcy and buy that crappy store from the bank when you foreclose." Well, the judge, the bailiff, and the guy's own lawyer were all looking at him aghast for saying the silent part out loud about the real reason why I was getting sued. My uncle then straight up said to him, "Oh, I'm sorry. Apparently you were never told. I've taken all of my nephew's cases pro bono. The only money he has spent on your litigations is gas. And bluntly, sir, I think your outburst has ensured a suit against you." After that, we just left, and I was then informed a few days later that the litigation was dropped. Well, right now my uncle and I are talking about the future suit against this guy. I want to sue this guy for a very high amount to try and get press attention on this guy and his sketchy actions. Although my uncle warned me that we'll need to be careful because if we set the damages too high, it'll look like we're being vindictive in some kind of way. This suit won't be pro bono, but after getting sued 5 times for free, essentially, I'm not going to complain. Looking back on this, I'm so thankful that my friends and family supported me the entire way, especially my uncle, because without my uncle, I would have absolutely lost my entire business. Before we go any further, the original poster has an update that they would like to share. Here's what they had to say a year after all of this went down. Okay, so this is a follow-up post that I made last year. For reference, last year I opened a liquor store with my girlfriend, who is now my fiance, in my hometown. The nearby city had a few liquor stores run by a city councilman, who is the person who controls who gets liquor license in said city. With me being 40 minutes away, he was losing business and offered to buy my store. Well, I refused, and instead, he tried to sue me for libel. He attempted to do this for half a year, where he continued to sue me, my business, or anything else he could, until it was thrown out with contempt. Fortunately, I was able to get my lawyer to take the case pro bono, so I didn't get buried in legal fees as the guy intended. And after that, my lawyer and I began to file suit against the guy. So that's where we left off a while ago. As of now, the case is over and I can finally talk about it. So to first explain why I didn't post any updates previously, when I filed the lawsuit, my lawyer said to not post anything about it online. I don't think that this had anything to do with the original post, but what he told me was that if the opposing counsel found a post and was able to link it back to me, they could argue that I was only filing suit to gain online clout. But now the court case is over, so I can now talk to you guys. We filed the complaint about a month after the last case against me was dismissed, and what we filed for was multiple accounts of malicious misuse of due process. After filing the complaint, we needed to serve the papers to the guy. Now, someone had to have told him because he dodged getting served for multiple weeks. The only reason the process server was able to serve him was because there was a meeting to approve the transfer of liquor license between 2 businesses in the city, which if you think about it is really ironic. He and his lawyers answered the complaint and said everything in the complaint and the summons was a deliberate misrepresentation of the facts. None of the suits filed against me were in any way malicious, but given that the only thing that changed between most of the suits was the named defendant, pretty much disproves all of that. He then went on to say that this current suit was simply a move by me to get revenge on him for trying to protect his business. And pretty much the entire answer was just him saying, "No, you did this, not me." After that, we moved into discovery, which I will talk about in a minute. Through the discovery process, there were a couple of motions for dismissal by the defendant's counsel. The first one was just in general that all the facts are wrong, and this was a lawsuit filed in bad faith. This was immediately thrown out by the judge because the 4 suits being filed back to back, with only the defendant being changed indicated that this was potentially a malicious lawsuit. The second motion was that these weren't malicious because the defendants were different. Effectively, the argument is that if it's the same defendant, then it would be a malicious suit. But because the defendant kept getting changed from suit to suit, that means that there was a legitimate complaint that they were trying to get solved, which technically would be legal and I would have no standing. However, the judge acknowledged that while the argument is legally sound, if you simply look at the wording of the law, it completely violates the spirit that is written within it, and the actions of the defendant only serve to confirm that the previous lawsuits were filed in bad faith. So then the motion was tossed out of court. Later, during discovery, the defendant filed for a venue change, and it seems how we filed in my local court. They argued that the local jury would be biased towards me, and this got dismissed as well because they forgot to ask for a jury trial. We were perfectly fine with proceeding with a bench trial, so we didn't ask for a jury. The judge decided then that because they didn't request a jury, a venue change would not offer any significant change in the trial. They then used that decision and some history I have with the same judge to appeal to the state court to dismiss the case, but they refused. So anyways, back to discovery. The whole process was extremely slow, and we were still in the middle of discovery when we decided to settle. We had received multiple settlement offers up to that point and rejected every single one of them. But at the end of November, the defendant decided to fire the manager of one of his businesses. The former manager then decided to turn over some text messages to the court. You see, we requested all communications about the malicious filings from last year that the defendant had made, and that included any text messages. That showed that neither counsel nor the defendant did the proper diligence to comply with discovery. The defense was then able to get the text removed from the evidence. And while the text might not have been able to be used as evidence if we had proceeded with trial, you can't erase that you hid evidence from the judge's memory. And trust me, they don't tend to take that very well. With this coming to light, the chicanery that the defendant had been pulling, the judge was just over all of this at this point. Our lawyers had to meet with the judge at the beginning of this month in December, where the defense's counsel was reprimanded. After this, the defendant offered a really big settlement, and after my fiance and I discussed it, we decided to accept the offer. Our wedding is now getting closer, and frankly, we don't want to deal with the court stuff anymore. The whole trial process was still months away, and there wasn't any guarantee that we would have gotten any more money. Unfortunately, it's not the nuclear revenge that me and my fiance were hoping for, and although the settlement did pay the remainder of my loan, we will have a nice chunk of money left over as a result of it. Wow, this is a crazy situation. First of all, that guy who owned that other business is a complete scumbag. Like seriously, look at what he tried to do to the original poster and his family. He literally made up multiple lawsuits just to try and get this guy taken down, and he even admits to that in the meeting itself. That must have been a nightmare, and I can only imagine going through that so many times while still trying to maintain some semblance of sanity. So good for you and your uncle for making sure that you came out on top, because this guy's behavior was completely uncalled for. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not sharing the parking spot with my roommate, even though we agreed that that spot would belong to me while we're living in a place that I don't want to live in? Because right now they're trying to go back on our deal, and it's honestly stressing me out beyond end. Here's what happened. Okay, so my roommate and I are in college, and we moved into an apartment for the school year. When we were touring places last year, my roommate shut down every place we toured except for one because it didn't have the things that she wanted, namely a washer and dryer unit, walk-in closet bedroom, as well as a certain size living room that she was looking for. The one place that she liked, I eventually agreed to live in with one requirement. I would get the one parking spot for the school years, and she would get it for the summers. And literally, this was my only requirement to live in a place that I didn't like. Fast forward 8 months and we re-signed the lease to live in the same apartment again. Then, out of nowhere, my roommate, who doesn't even have a car or off-campus job by the way, mentioned splitting a street parking pass for the next school year so that we could share the spot, and that she wanted to start in March, even though summer doesn't start until April 28th. She is getting a free car for the summer and school year next year from her boyfriend, and just randomly brought it up like this was normal and part of the agreement. When I mentioned to her that our agreement and my only thing I needed was the parking spot for the school years, which may not be fair, but she agreed to it, she said that only applied for 1 year, as if that was some kind of obvious thing. She waited until we signed the lease to have this conversation, and I honestly would have looked somewhere else to live that had 2 parking spaces if I knew this was what she was thinking. I compromised with her on literally everything because we are friends. She keeps the heat on so high because she's cold. She got the pick of the bathroom that she wanted. She has her boyfriend over every day, and I never ever complain. I'm waiting for her to bring up the conversation again to put my foot down and say I'm not street parking for the school year or even splitting the spot for the school year, and I will offer her $150 for the spot considering a street parking permit is $25. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because this honestly is incredibly annoying. No, you're not the jerk at all. The fact that your friend did this right after you signed the lease, like that is crazy and honestly so toxic because they clearly knew what they were doing. They did this on purpose and they did this in such a way where it's like, oh yeah, you have no choice but to agree, because it really sounds like they're going to try to do this pretty much no matter what, and that really is not fair for you. So no, you would not be the jerk by saying you don't want to share this spot because this is what you originally agreed on. And the fact that they don't want to honor that, in my opinion, is incredibly annoying. Someone from my work is spreading a rumor that I cheated on my girlfriend and it is now ruining my relationship. And I now feel at such a loss that at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, I will preface this by saying that my girlfriend and I have been in a loving relationship for over 4 years. We live together and we have never had any significant issues before. My girlfriend and I attended a housewarming for one of my coworkers on the weekend. At this party was a woman that I had met before at a previous work event, and she was friends with my coworkers who was hosting the party and also worked in our industry. About a couple of hours in, she comes over to me and my girlfriend, turns to her and says, "I'm sorry, but I can't sit here and watch this anymore. Your boyfriend cheated on you." Well, we were both shocked. My girlfriend doesn't say much and I protest my innocence. She goes on to say that I had hooked up with a different friend of hers at that work event that we met at, and apparently her friend told her this on their way home. Now, I did not know who she was talking about and didn't even recognize the name of the friend. It's possible I met her as well, but it would have been only for like a brief moment. My girlfriend takes my side of the argument, and we awkwardly leave a little bit after that, mostly because I was so angry. It's been 3 days ever since then, and things are weird. The vibes in our house are completely off. We aren't talking like we used to. We aren't texting each other throughout the day. We aren't laughing or telling stories. We've had conversations about it, but all I can do is deny cheating, which doesn't seem to make a difference, which is understandable. She says that she believes me, but I think there's a part of her that keeps saying, well, what if he's lying? And that thought's crept its way in and it won't leave. What can I do from here to prove that nothing happened and get my relationship back to where it was? It almost seems like it would be easier if I had cheated, so I could admit it and we could potentially move forward. My whole office seems to think that I'm a cheater too, which isn't nice. And lastly, can anything be done about this person I don't know making stuff up about me? What should I do? Okay, honestly, first and foremost, it's impossible to prove that you didn't cheat because, my God, the fact that this is even becoming like a rumor is proof that you work in a hostile work environment. And also, I think it might be time to go to human resources and explain just that. If I was in your shoes, I would be reporting the person who's spreading lies about you and be like, look, this is not okay. Because seriously, accusations like this are insidious and so absolutely uncalled for. So honestly, I really hope this gets worked out for you because this is something I can't imagine living through, especially when you know for a fact that you haven't done anything wrong. Am I the jerk for not inviting my stepmother to my wedding after enduring so many years of her mistreating me and the rest of my family? Because right now my dad is not taking this well, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my parents divorced when I was very young. My father cheated on my mother with his now wife. Ever since I was a child, she was never nice to me. She constantly made fun of me and my mother, who she never met, and she made awful comments about my mom's side of the family and deceased relatives. She was awful to me emotionally, made fun of my body and my clothing, called me and my mother names, and she also never allows my father and I to spend time alone together. Most recently, she banned me from their house after reading a text message that I sent to my dad, stating that she does not respect my boundaries and doesn't understand what the role of a stepmother should be. She also took down every photo of me in their home. My relationship with my dad has always been rocky. He was never there physically, emotionally, or financially for me. They have a son together who is 10 years younger than me. However, she kicked him out of the house several times since he was 13 and often gets in screaming matches with my dad in front of him. This happened again about a month ago, and my brother told me that he thought they were getting divorced. My dad said she wouldn't be at the wedding, and of course, about a week ago, they made up, but my brother is deeply hurt and is not speaking to her, and it was then that he told me not to invite her to the wedding. I told my dad this, and that given the years of mistreatment, neither me nor my fiance want her there. He said he cannot comply with that, and if she isn't invited, then he's not coming along either, and it will prevent his side of the family from coming, which I didn't know is entirely accurate as no one in his family can stand her. I eventually compromised and said that she can come if she sits a few rows back, which I've seen at weddings of others with divorced parents. He is not happy with that either and will not give me a straight answer. In fact, he keeps dismissing me. I don't feel like she deserves to be there, and if that means my dad doesn't come, then so be it. I compromised my own wishes to even invite her in the first place. She booked a hotel room months ago for this wedding, and I was previously against my will, giving her an invite, but the recent events with my brother and interactions with my father make me want to stand my ground. She feels she had the right to be there because she is his wife. So honestly, am I the jerk for not extending an invite to her? Because at this point, I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all. I've said it once and I'll say it 1,000 times. This is your wedding, so you absolutely get to decide who is and isn't there. And based on the current drama, it seems like this is not someone you want at your wedding in the first place. So in my opinion, I think you are completely justified. An entitled Karen demands that I give up my service dog, as she claims that her child needs it a lot more than I do. Things got so bad that she stole the leash to my dog and refused to give it back until I gave up my dog. Here's what happened. So I was browsing in a shopping center with my autism service dog by the name of Knox, and this was all being done as a training. I was picking clothes, trying them on, hoping that at the end of the training, I'll find something that suits my style. As I was entering another alternative clothes store, this entitled Karen taps me on the shoulder. She looks at me and says, "You do know that dogs aren't allowed in this store, right?" I look at her and I'm visibly confused and I say, "I'm sorry." This entitled Karen then says again, "Are you deaf? I said that you need to leave." I then pointed to Knox's vest, showing the label and the program name that certified her. I said, "Ma'am, this is a service dog." And before I could go any further, this entitled Karen cut me off. She said, "You are clearly not disabled. Even less, you're not autistic. You can talk. Now leave the store before I call security and get you banned." And at this point, I was barely holding it together, trying not to cry. I was trying to talk to her in some kind of an attempt to excuse myself, but she says, "No, I'm going to walk you to the exit to be sure that you and your dog are leaving." And it was at this moment my service dog Knox was alerted. I needed to sit down, but I couldn't. Everything was so loud, and it seemed the lights were getting even brighter. I started crying, and Knox moved between my legs for comfort. And at this point, I just kept saying over and over again to this entitled Karen to please go away. But she was talking over me, saying that I wasn't autistic, claiming that this dog wasn't in training, and that this was just some kind of scam. Overall, her speech became more and more muffled as I got even more overwhelmed. I attempted to sit down on the ground, but this entitled Karen grabbed my arm, and it was at that moment I snapped, and I shouted, "Do not touch me." If at this moment we didn't have a crowd before, we certainly did now. A security guard appeared, and I calmed down just a little bit, enough to understand what they were saying. The security guard asked what was happening, and this entitled Karen said, "This person over here is faking it. They have scammed a program to give them a service dog for their autism. My child will benefit from that dog more, as they really have autism, and they can't even speak. I need that dog." As she was saying it, I felt a tug on Knox's leash, and I unclipped it from her collar. I was now at this point holding on to Knox from her harness, as she was sitting right in front of me, giving gentle snuggles and kisses, trying to help me calm down. The entitled Karen then started screaming, "How dare you!" She then turned to the security guard, demanding that they do something about this. The security guard then turned to me and asked if that was a service dog, and while I was still crying, I was able to mutter out the words, "Yes, it is." This entitled Karen wasn't having it though. Thankfully, the security guard shut them up and asked if I had an ID for the service dog, to which I happily said, "Yes, I do." I gave the security guard the needed documents, and they checked them and gave it back to me. After checking everything over, the security guard said, "Your documents are intact. You are good to go about your business." But once he had said that, the entitled Karen freaked out. She said, "No, that is not fair. My kid needs that dog more than this adult." The security guard then asked this lady to please return the leash to this person and to continue on her day. This entitled Karen then literally tried to imply that she was taking my service dog and that I needed to give it up. But this security guard had my back, as he said, "Ma'am, that's theft. If you don't return the leash now, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to call the police." After that, the entitled Karen handed over the leash to the security guard, who gave it back to me. I was escorted away by the security guard just to make sure the entitled Karen doesn't continue to harass me. And after taking a chance to rest on one of the benches close by, I calmed down a bit and then eventually left. Absolutely insane story. I can't believe that someone would act like that towards a random stranger they've never met. I mean, that's ridiculous in my opinion. I was really hoping that the police really would be involved just to put this entitled Karen in her place, but at least the security guard had your back. I'm so sorry you had to put up with this, and hopefully something like this never happens to you again. again, because the challenges that you deal with on a daily basis are probably hard enough to deal with as it is. So having some weird entitled Karen get up in your face and talk down to you like that, I'm sure only makes matters worse. I am having a really tough time dealing with my pregnant wife's mood, and I honestly don't know what to do. For the past several weeks, my wife has practically been angry at me for everything, and sometimes she'll show a hint of kindness for maybe a few hours before she'll give me the silent treatment and the cold shoulder again. I feel at a loss of what to do, and this even gets me mildly angry for a few minutes, but then I always try to apologize for whatever happened. Now, the things that she gets angry about are not even related to me most of the times, I feel. For example, yesterday, she was wanting to go get some hot Cheetos, so we drove to a gas station together to grab some. They did not have any, so I told her we were going to stop by the next one to get some, but she refused to do that, and then she hasn't talked to me since then. Before that, she got angry because I forgot to change out our puppy's pee pad. I apologized and immediately changed it, but it still led to her giving me the silent treatment. And then before that, she just woke up frustrated at me for absolutely no reason. Sometimes she would get angry after seeing something on TikTok, like a girl getting flowers, and then getting mad at me for not getting her flowers, but I do every month on occasion. It's these little things that make me feel like I'm doing everything wrong, and I feel like garbage most of the time, and it's like I'm walking on a thin rope. It sucks seeing her treat me like this as well, and then talk to her siblings and family completely normal. I am frustrated because I have never gotten angry or raised my voice at her once in our entire relationship, but then I get the complete opposite treatment, only much worse as of late, due to which I assume is probably caused by the pregnancy. I have brought this up and talked about it a few times before, and she apologizes and says it's her hormones, but then it's just back to doing it again a few hours later. Is there some key word or something I can do to fix this? Should I just leave her alone every time she gets angry, or should I keep trying to please her and apologize? What should I do? This is definitely a tricky one because I can see both sides of this. It is definitely a wide known fact that a woman's hormones definitely go out of whack when they are pregnant, so that really can explain away why she's acting so angry and hostile all the time. But in that same vein of thought, that is not a good enough excuse, in my opinion, to treat someone like garbage that is supposed to be on your side, especially when she can clearly flip a switch and treat her family like nothing's wrong. That's just unacceptable in my opinion. And while no, I don't think she can control how she feels, because I'm sure she feels all over the place at this point in her pregnancy, she can certainly control how she acts. So maybe having a conversation about this would probably go a really long way. But if it still doesn't work out, I think your backup plan of just leaving her alone when she's acting like that might be the best way to solve this. In the end though, pregnancy is very hard, and after having family members go through pregnancy, their hormones are all over the place, and I'm sure there's a lot of nuance in the experience that you're having. So regardless, I would just be as patient as possible. She clearly was never like this when you first got with her, so maybe just take her angry outbursts with a grain of salt and say, you know what, she's going through a hard time right now, and maybe once this baby is out, she will go back to the person that you knew and loved. My girlfriend is ruining our relationship, and she simply doesn't care, and now I don't know what to do. Every argument we have is an excuse to stray from the relationship, meaning she will talk to other people and flirt with other people, or basically just talk garbage about me to anyone who will listen. Anytime one of our friends does something nice for their significant other, she then compares me to them and outright says things like, why can't you be more like them? Without any regard for how embarrassing it actually is when she does it right in front of a group of friends. She will openly flirt with other people and then get angry if I tell her I have an issue with it. I know I'm not perfect, and I know I have my own insecurities to work on, but at the same time, I don't think my insecurities are unfounded when I've caught her cheating on multiple times, and she continues to treat others with a level of respect I have never received throughout our relationship. And I fully recognize that I'm an idiot for staying, as well as being an idiot for believing that things will get better, or that any kind of change will come about. We've been together for a significant amount of time, which I prefer not to disclose. The last few weeks, I have told her I don't like the way she talks to me. She has told me that I read into what she says too much, and that I shouldn't be so sensitive. While I might be overreacting in some instances, I don't think it's unfair to tell someone joking or otherwise that they are being too harsh. Our most recent argument stemmed from a similar situation where she said she was being rude because I was being annoying. I asked her how I was being annoying, and she turned it into a bigger argument, basically telling me that I'm useless in every facet. Look, I'm not perfect, and I will will always defend myself, but I just don't understand how it's so easy to treat others like a doormat and think you're the one in the right all the time. Her excuse is that I don't deserve her treating me nicely when I haven't earned it. At this point in my life, I don't have the courage right now to just get up and leave, but it honestly really hurts to just sit here and stew in my own thoughts all day. What should I do? I think you know what you need to do, but you really don't want to do it for some reason. This lady does not love you. She treats you like garbage on a daily basis. In fact, she treats everybody else around her a lot better than the way she treats you. And that is absolutely unacceptable. In my opinion, from the outside looking in, you are absolutely in an abusive relationship, and you really should look at finding someone else who really will love you. The fact that she puts you down and says that you haven't earned her respect to be loved is ridiculous. That is not something that you have to earn. If this really was a loving relationship, it would be something that is basically expected out of each of you. And I get it. You've spent a lot of years with her and you don't want to talk about how long, but it's honestly never too late to reevaluate where you're at and to check in and see if maybe it's a good time to find somebody else in your life. Also, this is the biggest red flag here. She has cheated on you multiple times. You have caught her multiple times, and yet you are still deciding to stick around. I just don't think this is good for you, and this is a really unhealthy relationship. So maybe take the steps necessary to reevaluate this and see if this is even worth pursuing, because otherwise, honestly, I just don't see this getting better, and you're only gonna be miserable. My husband getting angry at his video games is starting to make me hate being in my own home, and I honestly don't know what to do. I'm hoping to get some advice regarding my husband's gaming habits. He has recently started playing a game, and since it's released, has become completely infatuated with this game specifically. He spends almost every free minute playing, and is neglecting spending time with me and our 2-year-old daughter. I knew he would spend lots of time playing when it first released, as he does really enjoy this franchise, and I was fine with this, and I didn't make any family plans for us to allow him time to play. But now, weeks later, I still cannot make any plans for us at all, because he just wants to play the game all the time, and gets annoyed if I ask to spend time with him. More recently, he has started raging at the game, yelling, swearing, and hitting his desk pretty much every time he plays. He has now made the home completely unpleasant to be in, and I have had to leave several times due to his raging behavior. He plays in the evening when our daughter is asleep, and has on occasion woken her up. He plays when I'm trying to sleep, and makes it impossible for me to rest. I'm also 24 weeks pregnant with our second child, and I've had to sleep during the day when he's at work because I'm just so completely exhausted. We have a small home, so there is nowhere for him to play where we can't hear him and be disturbed. During the day when he plays, I have to play loud music just to drown him out so he doesn't upset our daughter with his yelling. I have tried multiple times to talk to him about his behavior and express how uncomfortable it is to be around him when he's acting like this. I have especially expressed that he not play loudly and rage in the evenings when we are just trying to get some sleep. Every time I approach the subject with him, he gets defensive and often very angry at me, saying that he really enjoys the game and is taking playing very seriously, which involves frustration and some yelling. I understand, and I accept that as part of gaming sometimes, but I feel like his behavior has become extreme and very disrespectful towards me and his daughter, who have to share the space with him, especially when we're just trying to get some sleep. He has a high-pressure job and uses the game to blow off some steam, so I don't want to take that outlet away from him, but I am now completely miserable. I am sleep-deprived, and I hate being in my own home when he is playing. I'm also getting worried about this behavior continuing when our new baby arrives, and it's very sad that the last few months as a family of 3 are being spent this way. How do I talk to him about this? And is there anything I can even do about this situation? What should I do? So the first thing that came to my mind is maybe it's time to record him. Usually just a sound clip will work, but if you can catch him when he's the most angry, when he's loud and he's raging and he's getting angry, maybe you can then show that back to him and help him see that yes, this is really a problem. This might be a really good way of starting a solid conversation. And I'm not saying do this in a malicious way. Even just an audio clip will probably be really good to help him see that this behavior has got to stop. He's got to make some kind of compromise. And he needs to understand that you're not taking the game away from him. He can still absolutely play it, but he absolutely needs to calm down. He's disturbing you who is pregnant, and he's disturbing your child who's trying to sleep. And that's not fair for either of you at all. He is neglecting his responsibilities as a father and husband. And it's not fair for you to pick up the slack, especially when you are 24 weeks pregnant. permission. That's not okay in my opinion, and he really needs to step up and do the right thing. Today, I messed up by getting lost in the woods. This story takes place in Florida, at a management area that lets a certain amount of people hunt there every year. And as the season came about, my dad was one of the lucky ones who was able to go there and hunt. So we decided to scout out a spot for him while getting in some quality fishing. To clarify, fishing and walking in the woods is allowed. You just can't hunt there without a permit and permission. So anyhow, my dad found a spot from the river that seemed really promising, so we decided to check it out. After checking out the area, we decided to go just a little more inland, and after walking a couple of minutes, I noticed that my stepbrother and my dad were nowhere to be found. In my head, I couldn't comprehend how we were split up. We were right beside each other. So I figured I'd yell out to try and get some kind of response from somebody, but I heard absolutely nothing. So I figured I would wait a few more minutes and then call for them again, and still nothing. At this point, I figured I'd just go back to the boat and wait for them, but of course, with my superb sense of directions, I ended up going the wrong way. So about 15 to 20 minutes in, I hear a gunshot, knowing full well it was my dad trying to make noise for me to find him. He carried a concealed weapon for defense, cause in Florida, everything wants to hurt you, especially when you're in the woods, when you have to deal with black bears, deers, hogs, as well as the Florida puma. You simply don't want to take any chances. Unlucky for me though, it sounded distant and like it's coming from all sides. So I contemplated sitting on a tree stump, trying to figure out what to do, or listen for another shot. But then in the absolute silence of the forest, I heard it. The very faint sounds of cars could be heard in the distance. After thinking about it and being the great genius that I am, I decided to follow the sound, find a phone, and give them a call to let them know that I'm okay. So I started my great journey. The first encounter had been rather uneventful, except for the part where I could feel my lips drying up and chipping a little. After 2 hours in, however, I had wild deer pop up no more than 10 feet away from me, about 4 to 6 of them. They started running except for one buck, which I'm assuming was contemplating if he should attack or run, and luckily he ran. The journey continues and I'm seeing a lot of wildlife, including 2 bobcats and a gator sunbathing on the other side of the river. After roughly 3 hours or so, I can finally hear the road, but of course I'm not known for my luck, and I see a black bear in the distance, and yes, he spotted me. We look at each other for a few seconds, and thank God he walks away. I was already saying my last prayers, grabbing my knife, and telling myself, welp, this is it. Luckily, it didn't come to that though. Now finally, I see the road. I know where I am. Exhausted, I was making my way home, and about halfway there, my stepmom spots me and picks me up. She gives my dad a call, and we meet up at his house. After contemplating on how we ended up split up, we decided on me being an idiot for turning the wrong way and not waiting. My dad ended up buying me a GPS that can track your exact steps, and was talked into buying a phone. I personally can't stand phones, but now I absolutely see the convenience. I'm amazed that the original poster doesn't have some kind of cell phone, especially when you're gonna go hiking and in the woods. The chance of you getting lost clearly is pretty high. I mean, I'm surprised you didn't have something like that on you when you went in there, just in the off chance that you do get separated from your family. But thankfully it all worked out in the end, despite the fact that you had to hike 3 hours just to find a road. Today I messed up by learning the hard way that you don't pluck a bird's feather and expect that bird to be happy about it. This story takes place a long time ago, and this was all the way back in my grandparents' farm in Virginia. It was the early 80s, and I was just a little kid at about 4 or 5. It was apparently apparent, even from the early age, that I was going to grow up to work with animals. And you know what? I ended up doing that. I've been a professional dog trainer for almost 20 years now. This story explains why I work with dogs and not birds. You see, I was a wee lass of 4 or 5, and my family was visiting my mother's family in the mountains of Virginia. On this particular day, we were visiting my mother's great aunt, Aunt Tot. As we pull up to Aunt Tot's house, I noticed several peacocks wandering around and was immediately fascinated. When we got out of the car, my mother, who knew me very well, warned me not to mess with the peacocks. Still eyeing the birds, I gave an okay. Then my mom snapped her fingers in my face and made me look her straight in the eye. She said, "Do not mess with the peacocks." I looked at her and I promised that I would not. But you know what? I lied. Well, I did try not to mess with them. I really did. I followed them around for a while, pretending that I worked for National Geographic. But after a while, I got bored, and I started to think about how much I'd like to have one of those pretty feathers. I looked around to see if there were any on the ground, but there were none to be seen. And so I approached the large peacock from behind and told myself that he wouldn't miss just one feather, right? And so I plucked a feather from the peacock's tail feathers. And to this day, I break out into a cold sweat just thinking about this. For a moment, all was well. I had my feather, no blood was shed, and the peacock didn't seem to notice. But then he lifted his head from where he had been pecking at the ground and slowly turned his head to look at me with his beady bird eyes. I had just enough time to think, oh no, before the peacock suddenly fluffed up his tail feathers and charged straight at me. I did what any self-respecting 4 or 5-year-old would do in that situation. I turned tail and I ran for my life, screaming for my mommy. As I ran with the speed of a cheetah, I could see my mother sitting on a rocking chair on the front porch with a glass of iced tea in her hand. When I got near, I noticed that my mom seemed strangely unaffected by my plight. Worse, one of the peacock's henchmen was now blocking the steps to the porch. I dove to the left and ran around the side of the house, my foe hot on my heels. I must have run around that house 10,000 times it seemed, screaming for my mom the entire time. Never once did my mother stir or come to my assistance. But over my screaming, I did hear her say, "I told you not to mess with the peacocks," as I dove under the front porch for safety. I have no idea how long I hid under that porch, possibly as long as 3 days and nights. I don't recall the peacock finally wandering off, but I know he waited for quite a while for me to come out so that he and his peacock buddies could rough me up. When I was eventually coaxed out from my safe space, I was absolutely covered in dirt, sweat, and tears. I was eventually cleaned up and laughed at by my distant family, but you know what? I was alive. And even after all of that, I lost my feather in the end. So that, my friends, is why I respect and fear birds. Was it my fault? Absolutely. Would I do it again? No way. I'd rather deal with a 200-pound upset Rottweiler than ever deal with a bird of any size. And that is definitely a lesson learned. Peacocks are scary animals. They are not nice despite how beautiful they look. So I can absolutely visualize this original poster running for their life to try and get away from this animal. This is one of those moments in a kid's life where it's definitely going to be a core memory for the rest of their lives. And from the sounds of it, that's exactly what this was. An entitled, stupid security guard tries to blame me for shoplifting, all because I look like the person that he's looking for. But despite my explanations, he simply will not take no for an answer, and he refuses to let me leave the store. Here's what happened. I'll start by saying that I have a baby face and have always been mistaken for someone who's very young, even after graduating high school. I also have random people approach me asking if I remember them from such and such because I've always been mistaken for someone that they knew from somewhere else. It's really spooky. Also, during this incident that I'm about to describe, most people might say that this guy just made a mistake, but the way he spoke to me, even after I told him that he had made a mistake, he simply refused to believe me and even started making claims of theft when the actual shoplifter was also in the store actually taking things. Here's what happened. I had stopped at Walmart to buy myself a quick lunch for work. As a side note, I'm still wearing my teal-colored themed uniform shirt from my job that reads House Depot Cashier Appreciation Month. I'm also wearing black slacks and shoes, along with a purple cap that also has the same logo and store name written on it, while wearing my black one-shoulder work bag that I use to carry my work-related things. I had just paid for everything and was heading towards the exit when a security guard stops me and asks to check my things, which I let him do and even held out my receipt to prove that I had paid for everything. The security guard then jumps all over me and says, "Have you paid for everything?" And at this point, I'm still holding out my receipt and I say, yes, here it is right here. You can look over it all if you like. The security guard then says something absolutely baffling. He says, "And how do I know it's not fake ones from another store?" So I responded by saying, "Because I just finished paying for it, and if you ask that cashier over there who literally just rang me up, she can tell you that I just paid for everything." And at this point, I got really weirded out by what he was asking. He then says, "I'm only asking because I've gotten reports that there have been a lot of theft around here lately, and the report matches your description." And after he said that, I was shocked. I said, "I've shopped here sometimes by myself, but most times I come here with my family, and I've never stolen anything from here, or from any store for that matter. Besides, today was the only time I had available to stop by and get my lunch." The security guard then had the audacity to claim that I was apparently in the store yesterday night. But I defended myself and I said, I wasn't here last night. I was at home all day. And that's when this security guard ups the ante and starts to act in such a way that absolutely blew my mind. He then says, if you keep bad-mouthing me, I'll have you banned from this store. Now unload your bag and give back all the things you just took off the shelves right now. I explained to him that I'm telling the truth and that if he wants to go through my bag and check everything, I'm not going to stop him. But again, I haven't stolen anything from the store. And as I was trying to explain that I had just gotten off of work, he interrupted me and said, I've had enough of your garbage. I've been here all day and I've seen you repeatedly come in and out of the store with your bag loaded with things that you didn't pay for. I'm calling the cops to have you arrested and I'm getting management to have you banned permanently. And at this point, I didn't know what to do. I tried to reason with him, but he just straight up ignores me and radios over to management as well as getting another security guard involved just so they can detain me. Another security guard and the management finally make it over to us and they ask what's happening. This stupid security guard says, I've caught the shoplifter you told me about. And at this point, I chimed in again and I said, I'm not shoplifting. I'm just buying lunch for work. I've got the receipt to prove it. I haven't stolen anything. The manager asks to see the receipt and then the security guard actually claims that I'm using a fake receipt and refuses to believe that I wasn't lying. All while the second security guard was double checking and matching everything in my bag with the receipt. The manager finally looks up and says, everything in her bag matches up with the receipt. She's not lying or shoplifting. Please stop restricting her from leaving. But the security guard wasn't letting it go because he said he could have sworn he saw me walking in and out of the store all day, even for the past few days. So I had to explain again. I already told you, the past few days I've either been at home or in college, and today was literally the only day I had available to go shopping just to get lunch. And I've clearly not been walking in and out if I'm still wearing my work uniform. The security guard then falls silent for a second, and then he said, she's clearly lying now. She just said she was here all day, and now she's claiming she was at work. Thankfully, the second security guard had a set of brains on them because they said, no, that's what you said. She clearly said that she wasn't available to come here the past few days, up until right now. The manager then turns on this first security guard and says, if you've seen who's shoplifting all day, why didn't you bother to stop them or report them or just decide to step in? And just when this security guard was just about to say something, the manager stops him due to a call over the radio about needing security and management near the back of the store. The manager has this stupid security guard go with him just to see what the disturbance is, and the second security guard stays with me to hear my side of the story. After they walked away, I tell my side of the story, and as I finished, I get a text message from my dad asking why I'm not home yet, to which I speak to my dad, and he tells me he's coming to pick me up. After this, the first stupid security guard and the manager are dragging a struggling, maybe high school age girl with a backpack full of electronics and more, dressed in loose clothes and tan pants with a pink cap, as well as a few cop cars pulling up behind us. They caught the girl who was actually shoplifting. After the manager and security guard finished speaking to the police and the girl was taken away, the other security guard, the one that actually has a brain, confirms my story, and the first stupid security guard tries to walk away as quickly as he could, but the manager stops him and demands that he apologizes to me right now, to which he did, and the manager told me I was allowed to leave and not be banned from the store. As I stepped outside of the store, my dad pulls up, and we eventually go home. A few days later, I was there shopping again with my parents, and the first security guard that was giving me so many problems was no longer there, and I'm honestly not surprised if he was fired, especially since he was making false claims, as well as threatening me for a crime that I didn't commit. I am amazed at how stupid that first security guard really is. Not only did they watch this one person try and steal all this stuff, but they then grab the wrong person and try and pin it all on them. I mean, how obnoxious can you get? Talk about being terrible at your job. So I'm really glad that this all worked out, because there's nothing worse than being accused of something criminal, especially when you had nothing to do with it. I don't feel like my needs are being met, and at this point, I don't know what to do. So I've been dating my girlfriend for about 4 months, and we are currently 90 miles away. She travels to see me because she can work from home, and I don't get the time off to travel to see her. Things were good at the start, but as it got more serious, she started coming to visit for 2 weeks at a time. I felt I was losing myself, as I couldn't do the things that I enjoyed doing when she wasn't here, like spending time reading alone or seeing some friends. She says I can do these these things, but I do feel guilty that she came all this way just to see me, so I try not to always do these things when she's here. We have had a lot of conversations already about our relationship, and she says that I keep pointing out the negatives about her, despite her doing positive things like cleaning the house and stuff like that. I do appreciate these things, and I have told her that a lot, but what gets me is that she works from home, so she's always going to be at home when I finish work. 9 out of 10 times, she's still in her pajamas. She won't plan things for dinner. She won't plan anything for us to do when I get finished with work. She doesn't take much assertiveness to do or plan much of anything, and I feel like it's all being left to me, and it drains me mentally sometimes, as I feel like it's a lot of pressure. We have tried to talk about this before, and we do try continually to work on it. I feel like I have to spend every minute with her when she's here, but if I plan to do stuff with friends, she will moan that we don't do anything, but yet never makes plans with us in the first place. What I feel isn't healthy for her is that she has no real close friends or family where she currently stays, so she works from home when she's not with me all day alone, and then spends most of the day in the house alone. When she visits me again, it's the same thing, except I'll be here when I get home, and I just don't think it's healthy. But how do I explain that to her without hurting her feelings? She may be completely happy doing this, but I feel this puts a lot of pressure on me. When she's here, I never get that feeling of space or time apart, despite her being away for 2 weeks and then back in another 2 weeks. At times, I feel smothered. Today, for example, it was my day off, and I planned to do some things on my own, but she just laid about at work and then started joining in doing things that I was working on, but I just wanted some time alone to do it. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy her participating or even taking part in my interest, but sometimes I just need some alone time. I just feel we're at a point now where we've had so many conversations that nothing much is improving, and she constantly is getting upset and says I'm being negative when I'm just trying to discuss the problem in our relationship. She says I'm negative about her and can't see the positives in her, which is just completely not true. What should I do? I really do sympathize with the original poster in this one. I know what it's like to need some alone time just to decompress from work, and I also know when I want something done from my significant other and they're just not doing it. So you know what? Maybe some communication and setting up some kind of rules of engagement between the two of you would really go a long way. Maybe explain, hey, for this break of time, I want to just be alone and do my own thing. Maybe that's after work, maybe that's a specific time of the day, something along those lines. And when it comes to planning to do stuff, you could even take turns. Say, hey, this week it's my turn to figure something out for the both of us, and then next week you've got to get something going. That might be a positive solution you can look to and use as a way to get things done. You never know, it might work out. But overall, in my opinion, I think you just need to talk more and figure out what changes need to be made, because I don't think either of you are being a jerk in this situation. It honestly just sounds like there's a little bit of miscommunication that's putting people in the wrong kind of light. I just found out that my wife had a short affair with a coworker, and I don't know what to do. So my wife and I have been married for 10 years. We've had our ups and downs, but definitely it's not been terrible. We have 4 kids, all under 8 years old. I definitely get lazy pulling my weight on housework sometimes, and it has been a problem to a point. It seems like when I do stuff like laundry or wash dishes or just general cleaning, it's not good enough, and I shut down until it's brought back up again that I don't do enough around the house. Being an awesome father, though, does get me some brownie points just to try and make up for it. Anyways, last winter, my wife became withdrawn and started what I thought was suspicious behavior. I tried to use her phone for the Roku remote on the TV for the kids, but the passcode was changed, and she wouldn't let me know what the new code was, which is whatever, it's no big deal. I just find my phone and I use it. The next day, I find out that location services are turned off on Find a Friends, and it all seems super suspicious. So I flat out ask her what's going on. She says if I want to be that controlling of her, I can see anything on her phone. And at that point, she basically was offering me her phone to take a look, but I told her that I trust her and that I didn't want to look at it. She denies anything is happening, and the location thing was an accident. I only use the location to see when she's on her way home from work so I can try and get dinner going. But it's still weird, and I'm still super suspicious. Eventually, she picks up a second job, which was not needed, but the extra money is nice. I work full-time too, so it's not necessary, to be completely honest. Parenting was pretty split 50-50 before, but it quickly became 90-10 on my end. I love my kids more than anything, but it just sucks that it seems it's becoming more and more just me doing the parenting, since she is working both jobs at a full-time status. Spring break comes along, and we take a nice family vacation, and things start getting back to normal. She quit her part-time job, got promoted at her main job, job, and we decided to take a long weekend with just the two of us, just so we could enjoy our anniversary in the fall. I was able to get my family to watch the kids, and we honestly had a great time. We got a little tipsy one night, and she asked me to go order some food, and after that, she tosses me her phone to take care of it. She tells me the code to her phone, but I ended up messing it up and getting locked out, so I handed it back to her. So even if I wanted to, I didn't get a chance to look at her phone. We get back home from our trip, and our new phone upgrades that we ordered before we left had finally come in. I was able to migrate my old iPhone info pretty easily. She gets hers mostly done, but the SIM card won't work, so she gets frustrated and says that she will just deal with it later. The next day, I'm off work, and she goes to work, and against my better judgment, I try the new passcode on her phone that she left behind, and much to my surprise, it works, and all of her apps are working, along with her text messages. The new passcode is a date from last winter right before Christmas, which also lines up for when she started acting really shady. I check her messages from one of her best friends from that time, and I see that everything from February and earlier was deleted. I then remember that she makes private Facebook posts for journaling, and she sometimes shares them with me, and some of them she only keeps for herself. I scroll back to the date and my heart sunk. What I thought was going on was actually happening. She was absolutely having an affair with a coworker. It was a 20-year-old guy that she always complained about not pulling his weight. I do some more difficult digging, and I find out it started with just text messages, along with some playful banter at work, and it progressed into some really sketchy stuff, including sending some sketchy photos to each other. And then this led to finally taking a day off work a week before Christmas. But she told me that she was working that day, but in reality, she was just spending some quality time with him. From what I can tell, it was a one-time thing. They still texted each other, and she pushed him for another time, but he wouldn't do it. She deleted the text messages to him, but had screenshots of texts, as well as Snapchats in her hidden photo folder. I'm absolutely crushed. From what I can tell, he cut things off in the middle of January. The text messages from her friends indicate her two best friends knew about this and approved of it, which honestly blows my mind. The whole rest of the year, she made private posts about missing him and how bad she wanted to be with him, but she started to say that less and less as time went on. Flash forward back to last weekend, and he moved away to another state for college, and she is acting super depressed. She wrote a private post while we were on vacation that she knows her marriage is important to her and wants to be a better wife and a better mom. She has no idea that I know anything, and when I ask her why she's seemingly so sad today, she says that she's just overwhelmed at work and that she'll eventually be fine. But in reality, I know it's because he left. I don't know what to do about any of this. My trust in her is completely gone, but I still love her. I need to know how I should approach this. Do I just keep it to myself, knowing that it was a one-time mistake on her part and that she wants to work on our relationship? Do I confront her with the evidence? I'm sure I probably crossed some huge boundaries by snooping, but never in a million years have I or would I ever cheat on my wife, and I certainly was not expecting to find what I found on her phone. What should I do? What a tragic situation to be stuck in. Here you have your wife, who by the way is 37 years old, who blatantly had an affair with a 20-year-old coworker. That is absolutely disturbing and so bad. It's like she completely ignored you as well as your 4 young children. I mean, what on earth was she thinking? What a terrible life decision. And it's also so tragic that all of your worries really were confirmed. I mean, you could tell that something was off, but you couldn't quite pinpoint it until you went through her phone and found exactly what you were worried about. And to that, all I can say is I'm so sorry. So hopefully things can work out for you and your family, especially your kids in this situation, regardless of what you choose to do, because they do not deserve to deal with this. And it's truly tragic that their mom decided to betray their trust. Today, I messed up by expecting my family to pay for my birthday dinner. Yesterday, I turned 18 years old. For the past 6 years, like clockwork, every day on my birthday, we'd go to the same place for dinner, and I'd always get the same thing. For those who are a bit confused, I have extreme OCD, as well as high-functioning autism, which means I'm very well regulated, and I like things to stay the same way that they always have been. Every year on my birthday, we go to Applebee's. The first thing I would get is a steak and shrimp parmesan with a side of loaded mashed potatoes, as well as cheesy steamed broccoli, and on the side, I would have some mozzarella sticks. In total, it would be about $30. A bit expensive, I know. I couldn't really tell, but something was off until a bit later, because when me, my mom, and my stepfather, including my older brother brother sat down. They didn't really say anything. I was confused at first, and I started tapping my fingers nervously like I always do. My mother then looks at me and says, "Well, aren't you gonna call the waiter over?" And this gave me extreme anxiety. I have extreme issues when talking to people, and I tend to stutter, and I get very, very scared, if that's the right word. But I countered and asked if she could just do it, and so she did it, but in a huff. My dad and brother are staring nonchalantly, and as she calls the waiter over, the alarm bells are ringing in my head. This is never how it went before. As the waiter gets to the table, he asks everyone what they want, and everybody orders. As he gets to me, my mother stops him and says, "This is gonna be on a separate bill." And this is when my heart began beating very fast. I don't have a job, and all the money I get is from our neighbors raking leaves. I just kind of freeze. I don't really say anything, and I get a really bad stomachache from the anxiety. And this is where I am conflicted on whether I'm the jerk or not. My mother would explain at the table that now that I'm 18, I should be able to pay for my own things. I was already feeling nauseous from the situation, so I just said I don't have the money. My mom then makes a big scene out of it and sends the waiter away. And honestly, this soured the dinner party. However, my mom also paid for my 23-year-old brother. Because of this situation, my family was calling me an entitled jerk the entire ride home. When I got home, I just ran to my room and cried. Now they've been ignoring me the whole day. I may be bad at social cues, but my family has never acted like this before, and I mean never. They've been treating me horrible the whole day. I feel so angry and upset at my family. If I would have been warned, I would have saved my raking money and used it for the night. My family gets a little tight on money, and I guess I really should have asked before I assumed that they were going to pay for it. But I missed out on my birthday dinner because I wasn't mature enough to bring my own money. I guess I'm just going to have to rake leaves for a couple of weeks just to order it and make up for it with some takeout. What a terrible situation. Like, this original poster's family is super toxic. What kind of healthy parents would do this? Like, they just spring it on their son and say, "Okay, congratulations. You're paying for it with the job that you don't have, the money you currently don't have." Like, that's just ridiculous. Maybe some kind of talk that doesn't humiliate them in public would be a lot better than whatever they decided to do at this dinner table. I mean, that's just absolutely unfair. And to top it all off, this was literally your birthday. This was supposed to be a birthday dinner that you've had since you were a kid. I think anybody could confidently assume that everyone was there under the assumption that this was your birthday dinner, just like you've done every year for like the past however many years. Like, this is ridiculous, and your parents really should be ashamed of themselves. So in my opinion, you didn't mess up at all. If anything, it just shows how bad your parents really are, because this is absolutely obnoxious, and you did not have to deal with that for a second. My entitled parents refused to pay me back $12,000 that I loaned to them, telling me that unless I showed them some respect, I would never get my money back. And I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. 2 months ago, I recently lent my parents $12,000 as my family and I moved states, and they needed the money to pay for the house, bond, and rent. Plus, they needed money for furniture as well as some flights and some other things. My dad works and my mom gets money from the government. They have no debt or mortgages. They still have enough money to spend, but it's just the moving that was so expensive. They still get paid and have a reasonable amount of money though, but only enough for living and not enough to improve the house with furniture or painting it or stuff like that. Generally speaking, I'm always happy to lend my parents any kind of money that they need in the past, and previously it's always been paid back. I have had a really great relationship with them, and I respected them greatly growing up, especially my dad, and until recently we got along really well. I had planned on buying a car so I could work at my dream job, but they needed the money at the same time, so I gave it to them instead. Since then, I have grown increasingly bitter and angry towards them, as they have made no efforts to pay me back. And this shows in our relationship, as I am now really snappy or rude to them more often. I have lightly reminded them in the past weeks about the money that they owed me, and they just brushed it off, saying that, "Oh, you should just have patience. We don't have that kind of money yet." Eventually, I sat them down today, and I explained how much having a car would mean to me, and that I feel taken advantage of. My dad ended up saying, "We will not pay you back anything until you stop with the rude comments and start showing us respect." And at that point, I ended up in tears, because I honestly felt incredibly used. This was genuinely a first, as usually they try their best to pay me back in the past. It was always smaller amounts in the past though, and they used to treat me with respect and they were kind. They have shown no appreciation, besides a couple of thank you comments, and I honestly feel so depressed about it. I'm working at the moment and I'm saving more money, but it takes so long at $17 an hour. I also really need to buy a new phone, a new laptop, and several other things, but my funds are so low at the moment. My older sister, when she was my age, got $8,000 given to her for university, and she was given a laptop, an iPhone, and she was working at the time too, and had her own money to spend. She refuses to lend them her money, but she was given all this money in exchange for nothing. For me personally, based on my own personal beliefs, I don't like refusing someone in need when they really do need help. So if I have the money, I want to be willing to step up and help out. I still live with them, and moving out is not an option for me due to personal reasons. I also don't really want to move out as I'm very close to my siblings. How can I get them to pay me back, or at least set up a plan to do so? I am really struggling to come up with results, so any advice is really appreciated. What a tragedy this is. Basically, this original poster's parents said, "Oh, you want to give us $12,000? Thank you very much," and then they just took it, and they have no intention of paying it back. That would be literally the last time I would ever give them money, first and foremost. But most importantly, these parents are so toxic. I mean, this is $12,000. That is not a cheap amount. And the original poster has it right. There is so much that they could do with this money to try and improve their life and give them things that they need. They need a car, they need a laptop, they need a phone. Literally all of that's being obstructed because their parents took advantage of them. And yes, the original poster absolutely got taken advantage of. For better context, the original poster is only 18 years old, so it's understandable where you're thinking, hey, let me just lend some money to my parents. They clearly need a leg up, but I'm gonna help them out. The original poster probably never expected that their parents would never pay them back. So if I was in your shoes and they were really being this unmoving on giving me back my money, then I would feel used as well. This is really unfortunate for the original poster. Maybe there's some help if you talk with your extended family. Maybe talk to them about your situation and see if they might be able to help you out with what's going on. Because who knows, maybe they can talk to your mom or dad and explain to them, hey, you really need to pay your kid back. But hopefully you get this money back, because $12,000 is a lot of money, and it would be a shame for you to never get it back. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for cutting ties with my girlfriend a week before my family's Thanksgiving vacation? I'm a 22-year-old male, and I've been dating my now ex-girlfriend for about 2.5 years. I met her at college, and we hit it off straight away. We got together within the first month of talking to each other, and when she met my family, they instantly loved her. Every year, my family goes on a long vacation before Thanksgiving, and it's something I always look forward to. This year, I asked my family if my girlfriend could come on our Thanksgiving vacation. My mom said it was a great idea, and she is welcome. Around a month and a half before the vacation, my girlfriend sent me a text message saying that she no longer has feelings for me and that she wants to break up. And when I heard that, I was shattered. She never showed any signs of losing feelings for me. She was at my mom's house for dinner earlier that week. She never really told me why, but she kept saying, "Oh, it's not you," as well as saying, "There's no one else." I was hurt so much. I really loved her, and I could even see myself marrying her. I tried calling her and texting her, asking her what the problem was, but she either dodged the question or just straight up ignored me. I was in a very dark place for the first 2 weeks, but during the last 2 weeks, I have pulled myself up and I've gotten over it. Fast forward about a month, and I got a text message from a mutual friend about my ex-girlfriend saying that she broke up with her boyfriend and that she now wants to get back with me. This really surprised me, as she told me that she wasn't getting with anyone else and she just left me because she lost feelings. And soon enough, I get a call from my ex telling me that she wants to get back in a relationship with me. I told her that a mutual friend had told me that she was with someone else for the last month. She broke down and said that she did catch feelings for someone else, and she didn't want to tell me just because she didn't want to hurt me. She also said that the guy that she was seeing had cheated on her, and that she was coming to me for my support because I was always a loving and caring boyfriend. I told her that she would have been better off telling me that in the first place instead of ignoring me and putting me in such a dark place. I told her that I loved her and that I was really looking forward to going on my family's Thanksgiving vacation. She told me that she was sorry, and I half accepted her apology and just hung up after that. I was thinking about getting back with her until the same mutual friend sent me a screenshot of my ex telling this friend that basically because she dumped this other guy, she would then be able to get back with me and be able to go on this this vacation with my family again. She then also implied that she was always going to go on this trip, regardless of the fact that her boyfriend cheated on her. And she was also basically trying to make me feel bad so that I would get back with her and take her with me on this trip. And at this point, I lost it. It really hurt knowing that she only came back to me because her current boyfriend cheated on her, and that she just wants me to feel bad just so I can bring her back into my life so she can go on my family's Thanksgiving vacation. I sent her the screenshot and said, "Don't ever talk to me again." And I blocked her on everything possible and completely cut ties with her. I told my parents and family, and they comforted me. And they actually booked an extra week of vacation, which was really, really nice of them. Now, back when I blocked my ex, all of her friends kept calling me, saying that I was such a jerk for doing that to her, telling me that because she got cheated on, I'm somehow supposed to be there for her to comfort her. They also tried to say that her going on that vacation would have really helped her recover from the trauma and stress that she went through, which is honestly ridiculous. But it begs the question, am I the jerk for cutting ties with my ex-girlfriend before my family went on their Thanksgiving vacation? Because honestly, I'm not sure. You are not the jerk in this situation. Your ex is literally just trying to use you to get back on that vacation trip, which is just really disgusting in my opinion. You absolutely made the right move of trying to get away from her. She was literally just trying to manipulate you and make you feel bad so you'll have to let her back in just so she can go on this vacation trip with your family. I mean, how weird is that? So honestly, just move on from that, because this lady sounds crazy, and you can find a girlfriend who will love you for who you are, as well as one who won't use you just to go on some vacation. An entitled mother sits there while her kid cries on the ground and refuses to help him after he fell off his bike, and I honestly could not be more annoyed. So I was in the park with some of my friends. We had been there for a few hours, and most of them decided to go home. One of my friend's bike chain had jumped off its gears, so I helped him put it back on. After he leaves, I start heading towards a cafe in the park so I could run into the restroom and wash the black grease from the bike chain off of my hands. And this is where the entitled mother comes into this story. As I was approaching the cafe, this little kid, who couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old, falls off his little kid bicycle and starts crying. No one goes to help this poor little kid, so I help the little boy off the floor and see that he has some scratches on his leg. I ask him if he knows where his parents are, but he can't get any word out through the tears. So he points at this lady sitting on the bench nearby, who is looking up at the whole situation. I pick up his little bike and I'm about to walk him over to his mom when a man runs up to us in quite a panic to see if his son is all right. At this point, I noticed that the chain on the kid's bike was dangling off. As I still had grease on my hands from fixing my friend's bike earlier, I offer to help out and try and put his chain back on his bike. At this point, the dad is being very thankful towards me. He asks his son where his mom was, and the boy once again points to the same lady sitting on a bench, who is still just watching the situation play out. The father sighs, and you can hear the frustration in his voice now. I give the bike to the dad once I'm done, and he thanks me. As I'm about to walk away to go wash my hands, the lady who had been watching the whole situation up until this point walks up to me and gives me a $10 bill. I ask her what this was for, and she says it's for fixing her son's bike. And at this point, I just about lost my mind. I say to this lady with the most shocked expression I've probably ever had on my face, "You just watched your son fall off his bike and get hurt, and you didn't budge from the bench. You didn't care, but instead you're going to pay me for fixing his bike?" And once I had said that, she looks at me as if she had done nothing wrong and proceeds to say, "Oh, he's just exaggerating." She says this as she glances at the kid sitting on the ground with his dad cleaning the cut that he got on his knee. I look at this entitled mother and I say, "Look, keep your money, lady. Just take care of your child, please." And I proceed to walk off to the cafe restroom. As I'm walking away, I hear the dad starting to argue with her. I have no idea what happened next or what they were saying to each other, but regardless, I just hope this mom finally starts to look after her kid. How weird and entitled can you possibly get? Here's your kid falling on the ground, screaming and crying, cutting their leg open, and you're just sitting there on the bench watching a stranger take care of them. I mean, if that's not a terrible parent, I don't know what is. Thankfully, this kid has a good father who's actively involved in this kid's life, because the mom literally just sat there like a passenger and did absolutely nothing to help their son, which is not fair for the kid at all, or for the person who helped him out in the first place. I mean, they didn't have to stop and help this kid. The fact that he stopped in public just to help out a child is really brave of him, to be completely honest, because there are some crazy people out there that would make some crazy assumptions. So good for him for at least doing a good deed for the day, even if this mom is a terrible mother and would rather let a stranger take care of her kid as opposed to stepping up and doing the the right thing. My entitled mother goes through my diary and learns about my deep dark secrets just to try and use them against me. And when I tried to approach her about it, she just doubled down and said that she did this for my own good, and I honestly could not be more upset. Here's what happened. For some backstory, my mom is religious and incredibly intrusive, more so nowadays since my brother got married and moved out. She doesn't believe in privacy and thinks she has to know everything. I have known her to pry into my drawers and things and listen behind the door at times when I'm either talking to someone or myself. She also did this with my brother when he was still living here, listening in on his video calls to his fiance because she didn't trust his marriage. It started with him, but now she's moved on to me. So I was feeling mentally ill, and my mom knew about this and suggested that I write down my thoughts on paper to get everything out. I didn't know how to feel about therapy yet, and I thought it was a good idea. For the next year and a half, I wrote down my emotions. Stuff like how my day went, my experiences, everything. I would vent, I would cry, I would smile to this book. I would even draw down my feelings if I felt like it. It was very personal to me, and there was some extremely personal stuff in that journal. Things including my darkest thoughts, my true identity, and descriptive details about my relationship with my partner. I never planned for anyone to read it, especially my mother. Some days, however, she would ask me questions to say things that would sound awfully similar to what I would be experiencing at the time, even though I had not told her anything. I got suspicious, but I never asked, and instead, I just started to hide my journal. One day, I was approached by my partner who was paranoid and wanted to buy a pregnancy test. I was extremely nervous and I was stressed as we were too young to take care of a baby. I mean, we wanted to have a kid one day, but not this early. I had so many emotions going on inside my head, but I took the test and it turned out negative. We were both relieved and we calmed down for the rest of the day. But at the end of the day, I wrote down an entry regarding what happened and I just tucked it away. The next morning was eerily quiet. We had woken up for mass and my brother was driving us there. He was acting normal. It was my mom and dad that were very off. I would try looking to my mom, but she'd either look away or stare right through me. It was an extremely uncomfortable drive. When we made it to church, my mom and brother left the car, while my dad and I stayed inside for the next 30 minutes before mass starts. I look over to my dad and I ask him, "Dad, what's going on? Why is mom acting so cold?" It takes him a minute just to respond to me before he says, "You shouldn't leave your diary lying around." My heart and my stomach dropped. She could have read anything or everything. I was absolutely terrified for what would happen next, but I also felt really hurt and betrayed. My dad helped to console me and admitted that he didn't want to read it, but my mom forced him to listen to her reading it out loud to him. He wanted to respect my privacy and had the same experience in the past, where his mom read through his diaries and confronted him about them, in which he later had to end up burning those diaries. I was really thankful to have had him there by my side, and I couldn't have asked for a better dad. Since then, we've been getting along and have a much closer relationship. My mom and I, on the other hand, we finally had a sit down that night and we talked, and she finally told me herself about the journal. She confronted me about my most recent entry, the pregnancy test entry, and told me how mortified she was that I was spending quality time before marriage. And she just kept asking me, "You do know that's not right, right? It's not how a Catholic girl should be." She went on, sobbing and questioning whether she was naive to believe I could behave and not be tempted, as well as asking the heart-wrenching question, "Am I not a good mother?" I just sat there, crying silently with my head down, while my dad stayed quiet until he decided to sit next to me and hug me close. Eventually, I spoke up and I asked her, "Why did you look through my journal? What gives you the right?" She argued that she had every right, since I was going through a tough time and she was looking out for me, since I never talked to her about my problems, and that apparently this is the only way that she'll know. And now this is apparently a way for me to learn to trust her. But I don't want to talk to her about what's going on in my mind. It always ends up relating to her religious beliefs or making me feel more terrible than I already do feel. And her reading through my diary didn't make me want to trust her anymore. If anything, it made me want to run away. Ever since then, there's been a massive rift between me and my mom. I'm usually very forgiving, sometimes a little too forgiving, but I don't know if this is something I can let go of. Before, any behavior that I saw, I just brushed off because I thought I was overreacting, but after that, it became a bit clearer to me that something really was off. It really sunk in for me when I was telling a friend this same story while also stating, "But she's a nice mom, right? She makes me food and buys me clothes." My friend then stopped me and mentioned how those are just basic necessities and that I shouldn't be basing my relationship with her on whether or not she's providing those basic necessities. My friend then asked me how she's supporting me in my life or if I have any other good memories with her. And after that, I just blanked, which is honestly really unfortunate. So to all the parents out there, please understand this. If your kid wants to talk to you, they will if they feel you are approachable and will be supportive. But if they don't want to, that's fine too, and they are entitled to their own privacy. And don't spy on your kids in hopes that it will bring you two closer together, as it will only make you drift apart and could potentially break your relationship with them. What an awful situation to be stuck in. I think it's funny that your mom asked the question, "Am I a good mother?" Because you know what? If you're spying on your kid like that and making assumptions about your kid based on a private journal entry, then yeah, you're a pretty terrible mother. A journal or a diary is just that. It's supposed to be private experiences that you're just trying to get out of your head and document for later reference. Later meaning like, I don't know, years later, not like 10 minutes later. The original poster's mom is incredibly toxic, and no amount of justifying on her end is ever going to excuse her going through this person's diary, because in my opinion, there's absolutely no good reason for that. My boyfriend's family is really controlling of his life, and I honestly don't know what to do in our circumstance. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 2 years. We graduated in June, and we're planning on moving in together in a new city. Because he ended up getting a job in his hometown, I decided to move with him. We've been living separately for the first few months, due to him wanting to spend more time with his family, as well as just try to save some money, which I've been okay with since I was able to find a pretty solid job and have been able to support myself while living with my roommates. Before moving, we agreed that we would live separately for a couple of months for the above reasons before moving in together, especially so his family could become more acquainted with me. Flash forward a few months to now, and I am more than ready for us to move in together. I'm tired of living with roommates, and I want a nicer place. I'm also tired of having to go to his parents' house whenever I want to see him. I want my boyfriend and I to have our own life together. The only thing stopping us is his family's rejection and disapproval of our idea. They are deeply religious and think it's too early for us to move in together. In fact, they want to sit down and have a discussion about compromising in some way instead of just allowing us to move in together. We talked for over an hour last night over the phone, which was per their request. Their ideas are that he lives with me part-time and pays me 1/4 of my rent, which is just financially unfeasible. This city is very expensive, and that just would not work. The other option is that we wait until later in the future. And you know what? I really don't want to compromise. Reason being that I don't want to set a precedent that it's okay for them to interfere or dictate our life decisions. That's just not going to happen. We are both adults, and we both make our own money. I also feel that I already made a lot of sacrifices by moving across the state on the premise that we would live together. My boyfriend and I have already put a lot of thought into this individually, and I am of the belief that family members can be there to guide and provide wisdom in the process, but they shouldn't play a huge role in making the ultimate decision. So I honestly need to know, who is being unreasonable here? Is it me or is it the parents? Am I showing red flags, as they would put it? What should I do? I don't think it's unreasonable for you two to make your own decisions. For context, the people that are being described in this story are not teenagers. They are in their 20s, they are adults. They very much can make their own decisions in their life. So the fact that this guy's parents are stepping in and saying, okay, let's do it this way, which would definitely be financially unfeasible for you, is really inappropriate in my opinion. And I honestly would not take it. If you want to move in with your boyfriend, that is a decision between the two of you. They have literally nothing to do with it. And if anything, this is a problem with your boyfriend. I mean, how is he allowing them to basically run his life? He is 22 years old. He should be able to make his own adult choices. He does not need them all over him, dictating what he can and cannot do. That's not fair for you, and it's definitely not fair for him. And honestly, letting these people in to have some kind of discussion, as if they have any chips in this game, is only going to cause frustration in your life. I'm not saying cut them out, but I think cutting them out of this decision specifically and making it between you and your boyfriend would do both of you a lot of good. Because you said it best. You literally moved across the state under the mutual assumption that you would be living with your boyfriend eventually. And if that somehow gets ruined because of his parents, that would be incredibly infuriating. So I think have a conversation with your boyfriend and decide with him specifically what you two want to do, because his parents do not make the decisions anymore. And honestly, it really comes down to what you and your boyfriend want to do. An entitled Karen demands that I sell my items online to her specifically, all while throwing out outlandish threats of getting me banned from the website I was selling from. Things got so bad that she was actually trying to extort me for more of my products, but I simply wasn't having it, so I got revenge and I got her banned instead. Here's what happened. So my husband and I got married 14 years ago, and as a wedding gift, we received 12 full china sets, including sterling silver flatware. We live in a small house and only have 2 children, so 12 sets is way too many for us to store. The sets were never used and still in the box, so we decided to sell 4 of them. I posted them on a local Facebook sellers group, and I posted each item separately, from flatware to plates to wine glasses. I posted photos with details of the brand, the model number, and showed how they were new in the box. I also posted a link to where they were purchased from with the original cost. I posted these for sale about 6 months after our wedding, so they are still brand new and not outdated at all. Each flatware set was purchased for $75 a piece, and this is because they were sterling silver. Even though they were still in the box, I knew I couldn't sell them for $75, so I asked for $60 per set. Granted, this was a great deal, considering they were still being sold in the store for $75, so if the buyer wanted them, they would be getting a fantastic deal. But I didn't realize how many people would respond to this. I started getting comments under my post immediately, like literally 150 comments or so, asking to purchase what I posted. In the post, I said first come, first serve. I started with the first person, and when they tried to haggle or couldn't meet for several days, I moved on to the next commenter. I explained that if possible, I needed these gone in the next 72 hours. And with so many people interested, I didn't think this would be an issue at all. I started getting private messages on my social media regarding the flatware because potential buyers were arguing in the comment section about wanting to purchase my items, which I was shocked about because they were literally forks, spoons, and knives. But I was thrilled because I needed to get rid of them, and I would be making some money that my husband and I could really use at the time. One of the messages I received was from a 50-year-old woman who just so happens to be the entitled Karen of this story. She messaged me and asked me if the flatware sets were still available. I told her they are, but I'm working through the list of who commented first, because as I said, it's first come, first serve. Apparently, this particular group had a very strict set of rules about selling items that I wasn't aware of, since I hadn't ever sold anything on there before. This entitled Karen then told me that if I just sold the flatware to her, she wouldn't report me to the admins for violating the rules, and that way I would avoid a ban from the page. And by now, I was kind of annoyed, but I wanted to be done with the whole thing because the comments were starting to get nasty anyway, and I just wanted them gone. I told this entitled Karen if she met up with me at a mutually agreed upon location today after work, I would sell the flatware to her. She agreed, and we went back and forth a few more times to discuss the logistics of the meetup. Then she sent me this message. By the way, I only plan to pay you $8 per set. I'll take all 4. And when I read that, I actually laughed out loud, and I told her that the price was firm at $60 a set, and that there were countless other buyers who were willing to pay that price. In fact, part of the reason the comments were getting so nasty and why the rules were violated was because the commenters started offering more than the original asking price if I agreed to sell it to them and not go down the list according to first come, first serve. This entitled Karen then started to threaten me, telling me that she was good friends with the administrators and that what I was allowing to occur under my post violated the rules and could result in a permanent ban from the group. She doubled down and even had the gall to ask that I throw in one of my china sets as a measure of good faith and as an apology for causing so much chaos in the group. I had had enough at this point, and I told her that the only way I would consider selling her my flatware now after her blatant threats was if she paid $65 per set. Yes, I upped the price. And I also told her that she would have to meet today with cash in hand. This entitled Karen got so angry that I could almost see smoke coming out of the words that she was typing to me in the DM. She started calling me all these terrible names and said I was a horrible person. She then started guilt-tripping me, saying that she needed this flatware because it was on back order and that I had to sell them to her at the price I stated. Otherwise, that was just a rule breaker. But little did she know, I couldn't care less about being a member of this stupid Facebook group. I never bought anything from there and only posted these specific items this one time for sale. These groups are a dime a dozen, so if I get banned, I would still sleep like a baby every night and not give a second thought to it. I told this entitled Karen that I was done messaging her and that we weren't going to come to any kind of agreement, obviously. I wished her luck luck on finding the flatware that she needed elsewhere. She started tagging all the administrators from the group under my post, telling them that the group's rules were being violated. I started getting DMs from the main admins about the flatware post, asking what was going on. I then explained the situation with this entitled Karen and shared all of the screenshots of what happened. I then told this admin that if she had to ban me, I was fine with that. I would delete my post and sell it via DMs or in another group. The admin was super nice and told me that they wouldn't ban me, and she apologized to me for how this entitled Karen was treating me. She advised that I go back to trying to sell at the original asking price and in order of who commented first. Long story short, I ended up selling all 4 flatware sets for $60 a piece to a very sweet old lady that same day. The entitled Karen still commented nasty things on the post for several days after the post was marked as sold, and the admin ended up getting the entitled Karen banned from the group. So that was honestly pretty sweet. This is karma working its magic right in front of you. Absolutely fantastic story and result. This entitled Karen probably really thought she had this lady backed into a corner. I mean, she was basically extorting this person for all this flatware and fine china. I mean, how low of a person do you have to be to try and threaten someone just to try and get what you want? Like, that is not how it works. And I'm honestly so happy that that person got banned, because it is so toxic to treat people like this, and I'm willing to bet that this is not the first time that this entitled Karen has threatened someone in this way just to get a good deal. So in my opinion, this entitled Karen getting banned is absolutely well deserved. An entitled customer threatens my employee over an honest billing mistake. Things got so bad that I had to refuse them service, and I'm now in the process of trying to get them banned from the hotel I work at. Here's what happened. So I am a freshly promoted front desk supervisor at my hotel, and my coworker is my desk assistant. On the previous night shift, one of our third-party reservations declined, and in the mix, the virtual card was erased from the reservation and replaced with the guest's actual card during the incidental collection, resulting in a double charge. The guest saw the double charge on his statement and came down to the desk to immediately start screaming at the front desk agent. Once this popped off, the front desk agent called me to help explain the situation to this guest, as well as what was going on and how we were going to fix it. But the guest refused to listen and just kept cutting us off at every opportunity, telling us to refund him right now. At the time, we didn't know exactly what happened, and because it's the virtual card, only my general manager is supposed to handle that. But he still would not listen and continued to cut us off. Eventually, he got so angry that he started to threaten my desk agent. He said, "I'm gonna come back in 10 days, and if I don't see both charges go through, I'm gonna fight you." And after this guy said this, the desk agent told him to get out, and thankfully this guy did. Skip ahead to 9:30 last night, and I'm doing my manager stuff when 2 men come in, and one of them introduces themselves as the guests from earlier and requested a free room because of the double charge from earlier. I politely explained that even though there was a billing issue, I cannot and will not honor a free room for the night, to which the guest then threatened to call the police on me, which is honestly just hilarious. They were actually trying to claim that I was scamming him. He was extremely irate, and I was honestly worried he was going to get violent. I told him the police literally cannot help you with that, but feel free to call them if you really want to. To try and fix this situation and keep this guy from losing his mind, I called the third party about the reservation, and I explained the situation to them. I told them that I'm the supervisor, and I went through all the details with this guy meticulously. They then asked to book a room, and I said no. While I did fix their issue on their end, I told them that this guy could no longer stay at this hotel because he threatened my agent, and then he threatened me with the police. Once this was finally all explained to this guy, he again threatened to call the police. And at this point, I was reaching for my phone at this point, and I told him that the way he's acting is the very reason why I'm not giving them a room. Thankfully, after that confrontation, they left, and thank God they did. I called the third party this morning, and I am in the process of having his card flagged for our property. That way he can hopefully never come back, and we don't have to deal with him ever again. How crazy and weird do you have to be to threaten somebody over a card getting double charged? Like, it happens, it's not that big of a deal, and there's a way to get it fixed. I would say in most corporate settings, or corporately owned businesses, there's just no way they're gonna be scamming you out of your money. Sure, there's exceptions to everything, but to just jump to the conclusion of, oh, you're just trying to scam me, you're trying to take my money from me, is really outdated in my opinion. There are truly so many angles to try and get stuff taken care of, even if it does take a while. And to top it all off, he threatened to fight the front desk agent. I mean, it's not their fault, they're just doing their job. And I bet if this guy was just a little bit kinder, he probably would have gotten the help that he needed a lot quicker. But instead, he wanted to act crazy. And if that's the route you're gonna go, then you can definitely expect getting banned from properties, as well as getting absolutely no customer service. My ex broke up with me and has absolutely ruined my life. And now I am absolutely consumed with rage towards him, and I honestly don't know what to do. So I was broken up with by my ex-boyfriend in mid-2020 during the COVID lockdowns in my country. Ever since then, my life has been in a downward spiral, and I am so angry at him for breaking up with me and destroying our relationship. I feel like he completely ruined my life by doing that. I have medical issues, and I keep rapidly gaining weight no matter what I do or what medical treatment I seek. I have a terrible job, and I'm really struggling to finish my degree and make decent marks. Before we broke up, I was coping medically, my job was okay, and I received excellent marks and I worked hard at studying. He now seems to be living a perfectly happy life and has a girlfriend, and I can't bear the thought of dating, and I am terrified of the risk of subjecting myself to terrible men in the dating pool. Even if I wanted to, it wouldn't be possible for me to find a partner because I am overweight, I am chronically ill as well as mentally ill, and I don't put up with anybody's garbage anymore. There are hundreds of other 25-year-old skinny women without any problems lining up to accept garbage from these men, so they would have no reason to deal with me in the slightest. I know for a fact he talks trash about me behind my back to my mutual acquaintances, and they just blindly believe every single word of it, and it damages and ends my friendships with them as well. Basically, he's taken literally every single good thing in my life away from me. I have no close relationships, and I feel like everyone I know hates me. I feel like he only broke up with me due to the stress of the pandemic, which is now functionally over. It was a permanent solution to a temporary situation. If he had not done that, I would probably be engaged and really happy right now, instead of being a fat loser hurtling towards my 30th birthday with absolutely nothing to show for it. When we got together, I was young, thin, attractive, and successful. He took my best years, destroyed all of that, and now has made it impossible for me to get anyone else. He did so much other terrible stuff to me over the course of the relationship, but at this point, I'm just consumed with anger at him leaving me. He repeatedly had promised me we'd be together forever and all this other stuff, but you know what? He broke that promise for no reason. I hate him and I miss him at the same time. Basically, every waking moment is consumed with anger at this man. I feel that I will never get over this relationship and spend the rest of my life being totally miserable. And yes, I have been in therapy this whole time, and hopefully I can get this figured out because I honestly don't know what to do. It sounds like your ex-boyfriend is an absolute piece of garbage. The fact that he's going behind your back after the fact just to talk garbage about you and say all these terrible things, basically trying to ruin all your friendships and all this other stuff, is all the evidence you need to latch onto to prove to you once and for all that this guy sucked and you are so much better off without him. And I just don't think you need whatever he was trying to give you. I also think you're just being way too hard on yourself. The negative self-talk and the way you're putting yourself down and calling yourself basically unlovable is absolutely ridiculous. There is 100% somebody out there who would love and appreciate you exactly as you are. And if you wanted to get back into the dating pool, I'm sure you can find somebody who would love and appreciate you. I know if I was in your situation, I would do everything I can to improve my situation because you really do deserve to be happy. And hopefully as you continue to go to therapy, you can try and figure this out and find the best course of happiness for you in your life. I have been in love with a celebrity for nearly 10 years and I still can't get over it and I don't know what to do. I was in middle school when I started listening to this band and I fell hard for the lead singer. I was depressed, awkward, and unsure of myself, just as any middle schooler really would be. So I basically just filled the void with this band. I'm not a stalker or anything like that and would never do anything creepy or illegal, but I collected every album, watched every interview, made fan art, learned their songs on instruments, participated in the fan base online, and went to concerts. I've now seen this band many times in venues ranging from sold-out arenas to small secret shows. I even bought meet and greet when given the opportunity, and he was so sweet during it. I would constantly freak out about how much I love him to my friends, but I figured deep down that this was just a phase, and I was just making good memories for later on when I wouldn't care about this band anymore. I've used this band's music to celebrate my highest highs and to get me through my lowest lows. There was a point where I was so depressed that I could not fall asleep if I didn't have music on because my thoughts would be too painful, and his voice was the only thing that brought me enough comfort to get any sleep. Now I'm not as depressed anymore. I do get really sad sometimes, and I go through really rough patches, but I can deal with them much better now. Most of my friends except for one have grown out of the band now, so I keep things more to myself than in the past. I'm also more confident in myself, and I do extremely well in college, and I'm on the right path to my dream career through my college performance and internships so far. I went to another one of his concerts recently, which is the first one since COVID happened, and while I've stayed a fan the entire time, the concert was just amplifying those feelings so much again. I'd never been in an actual relationship, and sometimes I feel like I'll never love someone as much as I love him. He is totally 100% my type, and he just has the cutest, most adorable, caring personality. I know this is unhealthy, and I see posts about people getting over people they've known, but I don't know how to get over this random famous person. It feels weird, and I'm sure people won't understand, but all I can say is the love feels real to me. I know I'll never have him, so how can I get over him? What should I do? I think if I was in your shoes, I would remember that I don't actually know this person. Like, yeah, you probably love the music that they create and the image and the personality that they have. It's probably all stuff that you really want to have in your future partner, but you don't know this guy. Like, you really need to understand and remember that. And you don't even love him. You probably just love the idea of him, because at the end of the day, you don't know him at all. You simply see what he shows to the general public. I'm sure he seems like this warm, bubbly personality, and he's everything that you love, but you know what? He could very well be a jerk behind closed doors. And this is one of those parasocial relationships that really, in my opinion, is absolutely unhealthy. And if anything, it's just a waste of time. Like, let's think about this guy for a second. He probably deals with a lot of people who are in your shoes as well, who have this unrequited love for this man, all because of his music. And in my opinion, I think you need to take a step away and realize that the only way you've ever been able to see this person is if you pay to meet and greet with them. He's just an idea to you, a made-up fantasy, and that's honestly all he will ever be. So give yourself some distance and maybe go on a date with someone who is real, and find somebody who you really can get to know, because hanging on to this guy is only going to cause you a lot of heartache and a lot of frustration in your life. My fiance thinks I'm giving the cold shoulder to her, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my fiance and I honestly spend every waking minute together besides work, and that's about it. Here's how a typical workday goes. We wake up at the same time, go to work at the same time, and I end up picking her up after work about 2 hours later. Once I get home, before I've picked her up, I feed our animals and I get dinner prepped, and sometimes I clean up small amounts. Once done, I hop onto some RuneScape online, all the way up until it's time to go pick her up. I then go pick her up, come home, play a bit more, then go walk the dog with her. We come back inside, and I'll either play a little bit more and then go make dinner, or make dinner, then play some more. For those of you who don't know or play RuneScape, it's a very AFK game at times. So when dinner is ready, I set up to do something in the game that won't make me lose, and I watch dinner with her. After dinner, I'll pick back up where I was and keep playing till bedtime basically. And yes, this is just about an everyday occurrence, besides on most weekends. But now she's unhappy, and an argument has come about with her. She's saying that I don't spend time with her and that I'm giving her the cold shoulder. She is saying that I don't just sit on the couch with her just to watch TV. So I explained to her again how my game works, stating that I'm doing something that doesn't require me to be at the computer, and that this whole time I've been watching the TV and could probably tell you more about the show than you can tell me because you've just been sitting on your phone. She will then imply that I'm not really doing anything with her anyways, to which I then explain that I've offered for her to play my game and even play any game that she would want to pick, but she never wants to do that. She then says that we're in the house too much already as it is. So I explained to her that during work days, we shouldn't bother going out due to us not having free time till 6 o'clock. So it's honestly rather pointless on a work day, while also reminding her that we still go out on the weekends. She then tells me that when she wants attention, I never give it to her, which, if I'm gonna be honest here, is a bold-faced lie, as I honestly drop everything I'm doing for my fiance. When it's time to walk the dog, I'll immediately log out and go with her. When it comes to cooking dinner, I'll log out again and cook with her. Even whenever we're watching certain shows, I'll log out because I'm so interested in the series that we're watching. I pay attention to what clothes she likes and try to keep her wardrobe fresh and new. She doesn't appreciate it and will toss out the clothes the next day I get for her. I talk to her about what's going on in my workday, as well as listen to her and comment on her work days as well. We still have ample number of times for conversation. So honestly, I'm just really confused, and I wonder, how is it that I'm giving her the cold shoulder? What should I do to fix this situation? I think you really need to log out of your game and realize that you're playing it way too much. I think your girlfriend has a point. You basically explained over and over again that your life revolves around this video game, as opposed to what it really really should be revolved around, that being your fiance and your future marriage. You're really setting a weird precedent that this is what she's gonna have to deal with for the entirety of your marriage with her. And I'm sure she's probably very frustrated. She's saying stuff like, you need to spend time with me, basically implying that there's no quality time being spent between the two of you. So I think it might be time to cut back on the video game, because you're clearly messing with your relationship in a really negative way. Maybe playing it less and spending more time with her would probably fix this situation entirely. But I'm not sure if you're gonna see it, because based on what you've explained, it seems like you're being very prideful, and I'm just not sure if you're gonna be able to catch on to what's actually happening. So hopefully this all works out, because from the outside looking in, the fact that you're playing your video game this much, and the fact that this is such an important part of your day, is more or less what's causing so much friction in your relationship. And entitled Karen freaks out on me, claiming that I'm going straight to hell for listening to music that she classifies as devil music. And I honestly couldn't be more disgusted by her weird, toxic behavior. Here's what happened. I like to listen to many types of music regardless of the season. In fact, there are times when I will listen to my music in alphabetical order, and the only other people that freak out about my type of music is my parents. And it's never really any random stranger, except for this overly religious entitled Karen. So I had been on campus all morning and was heading home to relax for the day. I'm on the bus heading home, and it had just pulled away from the transit center. I noticed a little kid who peeked over my shoulder to look at my MP3 that I had at the time. I didn't mind that much, but I think the kid had looked enough to try and read the name of the songs on my MP3. And then after that, he just sat back down into his seat. I got back to looking out the window, which is something I do naturally, just tried to mind my own business. And around this time, the Carol of the Bells song started playing. And once that started, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turn and I see this kid's mom, who is the entitled Karen of this story. The entitled Karen goes in on me and says,
"Why are you listening to Christmas music during the summer?"
I look at her and I say, I'm just listening to my songs in alphabetical order, and that just happens to be the only song that starts with this letter. And before I could go any further, this entitled Karen freaks out, and I'm kind of amazed that she even cares. She says,
"But it's summer. You shouldn't listen to Christmas music during the summer. You're leaving a bad influence on little kids."
I look at her and I say, I'm listening to my music with earphones on, and clearly it's not loud enough to disturb anyone around me. This entitled Karen then just goes off on a rant, saying that I shouldn't listen to seasonal songs outside of their specific season. To add fuel to this weird fire this entitled Karen was creating, Carol of the Bells ended, and a tribute song for Devil May Cry started, and the song Dance with the Devil started playing. This entitled Karen must have looked down at my MP3 player, saw the name of this song, and went on a full rant about how I was listening to the devil's music, and that because of that, I'm a sinner. And it was at that point that I decided I needed to get off the bus now and just walk the 2 blocks home on foot. It was just a few stops away from my actual stop, and I would much rather do that than listen to this weird Karen rant on about her religion and about how I'm apparently gonna go to hell for listening to this type of music, all because the word devil is in the title. So I pull the stop cord, signifying to the driver that I just want to get off. The entitled Karen acts all dramatic, covering her kid's eyes so he couldn't see the devil music that's displaying across my MP3 screen. The driver stops and I just get off. He was simply ignoring the ranting Karen, who's still going on and on about my devil music, saying that it's infecting my very being. Then out of nowhere, she suddenly starts going off on this weird racist rant, describing me in some kind of weird stereotypical way based on my ethnicity. And then at this point, the driver chimed in and warned her that if she did not stop, he was going to kick her off the bus. And when this was happening, I was praying that this lady was not going to get off at the same time as me. Luckily for everybody, she did stop her weird rant, and I was able to get off the bus and be left alone. As the bus pulled away, I look up and I see this entitled Karen glaring daggers at me as they leave. But I just turned and walked away, still listening to my music, because I don't care what other people think. It's my music, and I can choose to listen to whatever I like. As long as it's not disturbing anybody else, then it's absolutely fine by me. What a weird entitled Karen. They really just jumped all over this person and freaked out not only because they're listening to Christmas music during the summer, but also because the song they were listening to had the word devil in it. I mean, what kind of cherry-picking Christian is this lady? I always find it super toxic when people use their religion just to try and discriminate against somebody else or to put somebody down and make them lesser than them, which I'm pretty sure is the exact opposite of what this lady is supposed to believe. And I also think it's a pretty telling sign that she went off on some weird racist rant that had absolutely nothing to do with the situation. What a wonderful example to leave for your kid. So good for this original poster for deciding to step away and say, you know know what, this is not worth my time. Because somebody's taste in music does not determine if they're a good or bad person. But in contrast, judging people based on your own worldview and then going off on some racist tangent, in my opinion, classifies you as a pretty terrible person. My ex is forcefully giving back all of my gifts that I've given her over the course of our relationship, and I'm honestly at a loss and I don't know what to do. So the title says it all. Me and my ex of a 2-year relationship broke up, and this happened in the beginning of August. She wants to get back together, but I absolutely don't want to because this relationship is toxic to me. Well, she is definitely toxic. So I broke up with her, and I'm carefully and slowly fading out of her life to avoid all the drama. I could go no contact, but it would be a bad idea because it would make her even more obsessed with me. I was quite clear about my position. I told her I wouldn't change my mind, but she still insists I'm not leading her on. What happened is she wanted to give back a SodaStream bottle, and we were supposed to meet up Sunday morning, but I forgot since we talked about it more than 2 weeks ago. She dropped off the SodaStream bottle as well as all the gifts I gave her at my door, but I know that it was just a pretext to try and talk to me in person. But I intentionally avoided it because she just keeps going and eats up my time, and it's always leaving me exhausted, stressed, and sad. I didn't want to spend 3 hours of my Sunday listening to her when there is nothing more to talk about. I still made time for a call that was about an hour and a half too long, where she told me she dropped off the bottle at my front door. I was just planning for a 30-minute call max, but she kept me on the phone and I went along with it for a little bit, hoping it would satisfy her, so she would leave me alone for a while after that. And at this point, I'm upset, because what's the point of giving back a gift? If you don't want it, just throw it in the trash, or maybe give it to someone else. I don't care. It's yours. You can do what you want with it. She kept insisting on coming back together during the call, but honestly, if there was even a slight chance of it happening, giving back the gifts like that just ruined that chance completely. I am so mad at her for doing it, and I'm wondering what's going on in her head to make her do that. I feel like she just pushed on me the problem of getting rid of it. Now I have to figure out how I'm gonna dispose of it. How can I deal with these gifts and the anger I'm feeling now? I gave them in good faith, in special moments, and I thought really hard about these gifts and what I wanted to give her, but now this feels like a slap in the face, especially just to get them all dropped back off at my house again. What should I do? Your ex sounds like she's seriously trying to manipulate you. She's obviously trying to step back into your life just to mess with you a little bit more. She's clearly toxic and she has some weird vendetta against you. So honestly, I would just ignore this. And I really don't agree with you in this case. I think going no contact would really be the best thing for you. She's clearly just trying to talk and waste your time and drag you back into a relationship. But I think for your own sanity, it is definitely time to cut her off, kick her to the curb, and move on with your life. Because it starts with gifts that she's given you, and then eventually it moves on to more stalking behavior. And it seems like this is just the tip of the iceberg in some ways. And it honestly feels like if you can stop this before it gets too bad, you can avoid a lot of frustration and a lot of heartache down the line. So if I was in your shoes, I would go no contact. I would block her on everything and just move on with your life. Because letting her back into your life, even if just for a moment, is only going to cause frustration and agony in your life. And I honestly don't think you deserve to deal with that. My entitled parents forced me to go trick-or-treating with my entitled younger brother, and I honestly could not be more upset. I recently had a wonderful day. My work just threw a pizza party earlier today, and I got to take one home. The pizza was good, and I bought donuts to share from a local shopping center. Even though the workday did speed up at around noon, I managed to keep calm and patient. Today was almost perfect, and I wanted to go trick-or-treating, as it was the night of Halloween. After my family and I ate some pasta that I made, I got myself ready. I wore a witch costume and had a black cape. It was a very comfortable outfit, even though the cape did warm my body almost to a point where I nearly ripped it off. My brother told me that he'd be ready to go, and I waited outside. It was quite warm, and there were mosquitoes buzzing around. It took a grand total of 40 minutes to get ready. During that time, I did ask him if he was okay, to which he replied yes. I then found out he was stalling for time and making me wait just to annoy me. I told him we needed to leave, and my parents just sided with him. I spoke even more firmly after a while and told him we needed to leave right now, or else all the houses and neighborhoods would be out of sweets. After this, I told him I'm leaving right now and to come with me because I won't put up with this stalling or any other annoying antics any further. Besides, it was hot and I was getting eaten alive by bugs. He finally came out and I calmed myself down, as I just wanted to enjoy a peaceful night with my brother. I didn't want to do this alone. We were a step off the driveway when he began to wrestle the bag bag I was holding out of my hand. I asked him why he wanted it, and he just ignored me, continuing to wrestle it out of my hand. I just walked away after that, not wanting to deal with this during Halloween, and I was tired. As I walked away, I heard my parents screaming at me. I went to a few of the houses, which thankfully had some chocolates left, and was heading up another part of the street when my dad called me. He yelled at me to come back, and so I ended up doing just that. I didn't want to hear more yelling, and I just ignored it. Otherwise, there would be more drama. As it turns out, my brother told them that he left his phone in the bag. I looked inside the bag, and I noticed that it wasn't there. I then saw him holding it and sticking the finger up at me. I was livid. He lied to my parents again, and I was yelled at for no reason. They yelled at me and forced me outside with him, telling us to have fun, even though I knew it would only end badly. My mother had instructed me to keep him safe and to look after him. It was fine for the first part, until it started to get a little bit darker. I told him that we should head home now, yet he still ignored me. Unfortunately, in my area, nighttime is the best time for the idiotic teenagers to come out. I was sent to the hospital once due to their actions. I felt unsafe and fear for my little brother's safety too. It was getting even darker now, and all the houses had run out of sweets. I told him we needed to head home, but he continued to ignore me and ran off into the darkness. I found him again soon, and he yelled at me for caring about him and wanting to keep him safe from all the idiots present during the night. I tried explaining that I was only looking out for him and following our mother's orders to keep him safe, and that he should prioritize his own safety rather than run after sweets late at night. But that didn't help either. He started getting aggravated, saying, "You wanna go?" just in some kind of weird attempt to intimidate me and scare me. I couldn't hold it in anymore, and I told him we needed to go home right now, as it was getting too late, as well as too dark to be outside anymore. Eventually, he said, "Fine," in a very sarcastic tone, and berated me for acting like a dominant person and treating him so poorly, along with any other excuse you could think of. I kept as calm as I possibly could, holding back my tears. All I wanted to do was enjoy a night out with my brother, and it turned into something I wanted to avoid. He then ran from me in the direction of our house, yelling obscenities and grabbing the attention of cars passing by. I was afraid of him running off into the darkness in hopes of finding more sweets again, so I chased after him. But that didn't help either, as I had a few cars beeping at me and their drivers screaming at me to stop chasing that child, despite the fact that I was explaining that that's just my dumb brother running off into the dark. I came to a halfway point and my brother had disappeared. I called out for him and he came out from behind the sandstone structure and attempted to push me into the road. I pushed him back in self-defense and watched him run away again. I arrived home, and as soon as I stepped through the door, I yelled at him. Apparently, according to my brother, I had chased him home and threatened him, and I apparently hit him trying to get his bag of chocolates. I tried to explain what happened, but I was cut off, even though I kept trying to speak up. All I can say is that this was the worst Halloween I've ever had, and if I ever do it again, I want to do it with someone who will actually treat me like a normal human being, instead of just a mental punching bag like my little brother and my stupid entitled parents. How awful is that? This original poster was looking forward to going trick-or-treating all day, and their stupid little brother, as well as their stupid entitled parents, completely ruined it. And to make matters worse, it sounds like the parents just simply would not listen to this original poster. They completely ignored everything they were saying and took the side of this spoiled little brat of a brother. That's really unfortunate. So I'm really sorry to the original poster that this happened. But you know what? Maybe next year you can make other plans, and you can go spend your Halloween with some friends who will treat you right. That way you can have some fun and avoid your annoying, spoiled little brother. My roommate and best friend is starting to get unbearable, and I don't know if I can maintain this friendship or any relationship with her after this, and I honestly don't know what to do. I live with two other roommates, and we are all college-age students who were friends for about 3 years prior to living together. But my one roommate is driving me and my other roommate absolutely crazy. For one, she says that she's very OCD, especially when it comes to cleanliness. The apartment is kept spotless thanks to her, which I genuinely appreciate, but we never asked or expected her to be the housekeeper. She chooses to do this on her own. She doesn't allow anything on the tables except what's supposed to be there, like the napkin holder and candles, stuff like that. And anytime anything is left on the table, she will put it in front of our doors. I understand that she doesn't like clutter, but we can't even keep things like water bottles or a book in our shared space, namely the kitchen or the living room. Our apartment looks like a Bed Bath & Beyond display, which is beautiful, but not sustainable for college students in my opinion. What initiated this post in the first place is that she sent an incredibly passive-aggressive paragraph into our general chat, basically saying she's tired of cleaning up after us and she is at her wit's end. I understand her points, and I said I would try to be more cognizant of cleaning, but she has a standard of cleanliness that is just way above me and my other roommate. Me and the other roommate are a bit messy, and our own rooms look like stereotypical college student rooms, but we do clean up after ourselves in the common space. Occasionally, a couple of dishes will be left in the sink for maybe half a day, as we all have different schedules for classes as well as work, and we're often in a rush, so we don't have time fully to clean up before we get going. I sometimes leave dishes for maybe a couple of hours, but we have never asked this one roommate to clean up for us. But regardless, she often just does the dishes if she sees them, and has always acted like she doesn't care about doing so, and it wasn't really a big deal, which apparently it clearly is. Another thing is that sometimes we host get-togethers on the weekend, which is something that is not unusual for college students to do. So yes, the apartment can get a bit messy. We typically wait until the morning after to clean up, but she wakes up earlier than us and just cleans it herself, which again, we never asked her to do this. This also seems to only be a problem when it's just me or the other roommate hanging out and just having a good time, and this never is a problem when she is included. And whenever she hosts people by herself, we have never said anything about her mess in the mornings because we understand that no one is going to clean up at 2 in the morning while wasted. The other issue is a big one, and this is a noise issue. She has very bad sleeping problems and cannot fall asleep with any noise. And I mean, I have even gotten text messages from her asking me to move around a little bit quieter and to close the cabinets quieter. The worst thing is that she sleeps very early, while me and my other roommate are night owls. We even got a message from her at 10 o'clock at night asking us to be quiet when we were having a conversation at a completely normal and reasonable volume. Even when I am actively trying to move around as quietly as possible, it will still disturb her. We basically have to live on her schedule. If she decides to sleep later one day, we can live our lives like normal. But if she decides she wants to sleep at, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night, we basically can't do anything and have to stay silent in our rooms. I sympathize with her problem, but it is so difficult to accommodate, especially since no solutions seem to help. She says sound machines don't work, earplugs don't work, and even worse, when she wakes up in the morning, which can be super early by the way, she will occasionally decide to use her blender right there in the morning without even considering our sleep schedules. Luckily, I'm usually able to sleep through it, but why are we expected to tiptoe around her while she can do whatever she wants? This is probably the issue that is causing the most frustration and is honestly the hardest to address. She genuinely feels bad about it and always apologizes, but there is really no solution I can think of. Overall, we basically operate on whatever she wants. There is essentially no compromising. My other roommate had lived with her for the year prior as well, and she told me that she had to try to figure something out regarding the noise problem. But this roommate is essentially saying, "You're asking me to compromise my sleep," and just completely shuts down any suggestions. And she is basically able to do whatever she wants. If she wants to leave dishes in the sink because she's busy or something like that, she is free to do it and will never deal with any complaints from us. But if either of us does that, she will then claim that she's being forced to clean up after us. She acts like she owns the place when we all pay equal rent. I would really like an objective opinion on this situation, as well as suggestions on how to move forward. If me and my good roommate are actually being the jerks here, then we will happily adjust. But my personal feelings are that we are just trying to be good roommates and maintain an acceptable college student home. I also want to mention that I lived with 3 other girls the year prior, and we never had any of these kinds of problems. If someone left the dishes for a day or two, we would just work around them and understand that said roommate is probably very busy. If there was a party the night before, no one would complain about a mess because we knew whoever hosted would clean it up as soon as they woke up. Maybe this is an unfair standard to expect, but this is what I was used to, and things worked fine, and they were my best friends, just like my other roommate and this one that's causing me problems. What should I do? Because I'm honestly at a loss and I'm not sure where to go from here. I think your roommate needs to understand that you need to have some kind of compromise. Otherwise, this is just not going to work. She says that you're making too much noise at night. Well, you can then counter that and say, no, you're making noise in the morning. We're both at fault. Sure, you can try and quiet down as it is, but you know what? This is college. People are going to have normal conversations in the middle of the night. Like, that's not totally out of the ordinary. So I think you need to explain to her quite bluntly, it sounds like, that if she's having trouble sleeping, then she needs to accommodate herself to either earplugs or revisiting some of these things that she claims is never gonna work. Also, when it comes to cleaning, I think obviously just step up where it is, but also tell this roommate that she's doing too much and that she really should not be touching your property. And yeah, I totally agree with you. You can absolutely put stuff up in your common areas because that really should not be a problem with anybody involved in that apartment. The fact that she's moving your stuff around and placing it in front of your door in a passive-aggressive way is really toxic. I think if anything, just tough it out till the end of the year and find a new place to live next year, because this lady sounds absolutely obnoxious to deal with. And I can completely understand where you're coming from, where you're kind of at your wit's end and you don't know exactly how to deal with this. An entitled customer acts incredibly obnoxious, snapping his fingers and clinking his glass just to get my attention. And once things got so bad, I ended up snapping at him and putting him right in his place. And what happened as a result of that absolutely blew my mind and still has left me surprised to this day. Here's what happened. So I worked at a very small restaurant in Baltimore City. It was the part of the city that was up and coming at the time. So we had a mixed clientele of hipsters and seniors who had been coming here for years. Early on in the night, I got a foretop of two elderly couples who had come down for the crab cakes. From the very beginning, at the start of our interactions, one of the men was very condescending, calling me nicknames like sweet cheeks and stuff like that. I took their order and not even 2 minutes later, he was snapping his fingers to get my attention. So I finished what I was doing and I went over to him. He asked me to bring him about 5 different condiment sauces, as well as a bowl and a spoon so he could make his special sauce. So I ended up doing that even if it was really weird. He then proceeded to give me a supposed lesson on how to make this sauce. I can't remember exactly what the contents were, but I do remember mayonnaise, Worcestershire sauce, malt vinegar, and honey Dijon. Once he was done, he said, "It's a shame you have to live this life, but pretty people never get the brains, you know? Maybe the sauce can help you get something on the menu." At this point, I had had enough, and I just walked away. 2 minutes later, the snapping ensued. I looked at him, looked away, and continued on with my other customers. My tip literally wasn't worth it with this guy. Then, after his ignored snapping attempts, he started clinking his glass with his fork, which I also completely ignored. When their food came out, I took it to their table, and he was enraged. He asked me why I had been ignoring him, and I told him straight up that I don't respond to snapping and clinking, and that if he would like to get my attention in the future, he could use his manners and say "excuse me" like a dignified human being. I then asked what I could help him with, and he said he just wanted me to try his sauce, to which I obviously declined. When their meal was finished, he let me know to not expect any kind of tip because I was so ungrateful of him. He said that he was just trying to help me get some prospects, and that's when I let him know that I was in my final year of graduate school and I was at the top of my class. I said that my prospects were just fine and that his behavior was completely unacceptable. I told him he was rude, condescending, and incredibly ignorant, and that I hope his prospects in life improve with a little bit of training in basic human manners. He stormed out and said he would be contacting the owner, who was thankfully on my side and gave me her blessing. But after that altercation, everything changed. 5 minutes later, his wife came in and discreetly handed me $50. She thanked me for teaching him a lesson. I'm not sure of her reasoning on this part, but after that, they came in once a month and always requested my section. He always said "excuse me," and they always left a $50 tip. When I graduated and left the city, they got me a card and a very generous gift. So in the end, it all kind of just worked out. This story definitely took a turn I did not expect. I would have never guessed that that guy and his wife would have come back to that restaurant and specifically asked for this original poster section. But I guess the wife was right. He really did need to be put in his place and taught some manners. While it's good to see that he learned his lesson, I think it probably would have been a lot better for this guy to learn this lesson before treating people like garbage. I mean, how obnoxious is that? Snapping his fingers and tapping his glass just to try and get his server's attention. You have to be a pretty terrible person, in my opinion, to treat someone like that. There's no good excuse, in my opinion. The fact that he was trying to stress test somebody in their workplace when they're just trying to make ends meet and get through the night is absolutely disgusting. This guy is an absolute jerk, in my opinion, regardless of whatever lesson he learned from the original poster. I mean, this weirdo was even making his own special sauce right there at his seat. I mean, how weird could you get? But I guess in the end, he learned his lesson, and hopefully next time he never acts like that towards someone who's honestly just trying to make a living. My neighbor is convinced that I'm her personal doorman, and at this point, I don't know what to do. So I live in the ground floor of a block of flats that has a security door, so if you don't have a key, you need to be buzzed in. For the last month or so, one of my neighbors on the top floor has lost her key and has yet to replace it to this day. So instead, she presses my buzzer to be let in. The first couple of times she did it, I let her in because I hate the sound of the buzzer. When I have people over, for example, I will just go out before they arrive and open the door so they don't need to buzz in. And I also did this to be somewhat neighborly. Well, this has now led to her pressing my buzzer every single time she wants to come in. I've taken to ignoring her when she buzzes my door. It's not my fault she doesn't have a key, and it's not my job to let people in. Because of this, she's taken to holding my buzzer in or pressing it several times before giving up and getting someone else to let her in. In fact, the other day, after having ignored her for about 5 minutes, she even came up to my living room window and looked in just to see if she could spot me, and that was honestly the final straw for me. The next night, I put a sign saying that whoever was doing it, could they please stop doing it, because it's not my job to be the doorman. And when she saw that, that set her off completely. She went outside and started shouting and swearing at my window. My blinds were down, but some light from a lamp was bleeding through, stating that I wasn't being very neighborly and that I was purposefully leaving her outside in the cold, which is honestly just ridiculous. In fact, about an hour ago, she went out and started holding down my buzzer and moaning and groaning that I wouldn't let her in because she was freezing. Because of her actions and her blatant abuse of my buzzer, I am planning on reporting her to the police via the non-emergency line. But besides that, I honestly don't know what to do. This is a really weird situation because this is a solid example of why you shouldn't do exactly what this original poster did, even if you're just trying to be nice. Sure, the first few times you were just trying to be a good neighbor, but then this crazy psychopath decided, oh, they're gonna let me in every single time. I will just buzz them instead of, I don't know, getting my own key. So in my opinion, it's time to go to building management. Let them know that this lady is legitimately harassing you. And I think you're right. Filing this with the police department might be for the best. This lady seems unhinged. I mean, she's screaming at you through your window. She tried to peek in through your window just to see if you were there. I mean, that's some really crazy, creepy, stalker-like behavior. And in my opinion, I would not take that sitting down. So report her to the landlord, tell them that she is disturbing your peace, and she is straight up harassing you at this point. Because what you're describing sounds like an absolute nightmare, and this is not something that anybody ever deserves to deal with. My partner of 5 years wants to move out but not break up, and at this point I feel so defeated and I don't know what to do. So basically the title says it all. We have been together for 5 years, we go through our ups and downs, but for a little while now, I could tell things have been different. He's the love of my life, and now the little things I do that he used to love just annoy him. He feels like he can't talk to me. He can't have intellectual conversations with me that have depth and meaning. We live in a granny flat type house together, so no space away besides when either of us are working. He says that he dreads coming home to me because I don't give him space, but like we live in a box, so it's hard for me to do that. I mean, the only room with a door is the bathroom. We used to be on fire. We were so in love, and we always did things together. Now we never do anything, and when I say I want to do something, I'm apparently just nagging him or putting pressure on him. He came home today and something was off, and I honestly felt it right away. He sat down and said, "We need to talk." And it was first a breakup speech saying he doesn't want to lose me in his life and that he can't be in a relationship right now. I'm devastated because we've built a life together and we have animals as well. His biggest reason is just because we don't have the space to be separate from each other, which I feel like is a big deal for him. I feel like we haven't had a fair chance to let our relationship truly flourish. We both don't have much money and can't really afford to move out in this economy. Also, we have no family support either. We click on an emotional level unlike anything either of us have ever experienced. So we came to the decision for him to move out, I suppose. I feel so defeated because we really do have so much love for each other, and I'm really finding it hard to picture my life without him. I really can't get the thought out of my head that he's doing this so it's easier to break up, like slowly getting the ducks in a row to pull the trigger, and it feels like this is just inevitable. I really don't want him to leave. I feel like he's my soulmate, and this whole thing is breaking my heart and soul, and I honestly don't know what to do. I know the original poster probably doesn't want to hear this, but it really does sound like he's already broken up with you, and he's using the excuse of, oh, I just don't have any room and I want to move out as like the most perfect excuse to get away from you. And I don't think this is your fault at all. You sound like a really nice person, but it really does sound like your partner has ulterior motives. And honestly, I'm just really sorry you have to deal with that. This definitely sounds like a really crappy situation, and hopefully everything's able to work out for you. My significant other is highly sensitive and easily annoyed with me, and it's really painful because I am also highly sensitive, which is all causing some some serious problems in our relationship, and I honestly don't know what to do. My girlfriend and I have been together for 9 months. We are both divorcees and have 2 young children from my previous marriage. She has none, but wants to have a child very soon. This has put pressure on the relationship to determine whether we are going to be embarking on that journey together. We enjoy each other's company, but we both have an anxious attachment style. We do not have any conflicts over any big issues, but tend to have small things that spiral into big conflicts. We have been going to couples therapy for 2 months now, which has greatly improved our conflict management. We both are highly self-aware and have very good communication between one another about our needs and other stuff along those lines. We are easy at apologizing when we mess up. We also know that the both of us being anxious attachment style type people does not bode well for us, but we have a willingness to work very hard at the relationship. But here is my issue with the entire thing. She is very particular, and I feel like she's uptight with a lot of things. She is easily slightly annoyed. She does express it in a healthy manner, not at all while being toxic, belittling, or condescending, but she will have a grumpy and negative energy, which makes me feel like I'm always walking on eggshells because I have this tendency to want to please my partner. I am aware of this tendency, and I try to remind myself that I am not responsible for her emotions, while also trying to be better about my boundaries and not being codependent. Here's just a few of the things that she will get upset about. For example, when we went hiking, I hiked too fast at one part, and she felt like she had to rush just to catch up. She never said anything, but just had a grumpy demeanor, which I really didn't know where it was from. Another example comes from lunch. I was looking at the TV in the background while we were having lunch, and I was a little distracted by it. She didn't say anything, but she brought it up later. Another time we were playing a board game, and I was taking too long on my turn, thinking about what I wanted to do, and she got frustrated by that. She also, in general, gets upset when I'm on my phone. I believe I have proper phone etiquette, but sometimes when I'm with her, I will look at it on occasion, and I've never had any previous partner call me out on it, but she has 0 alerts on her phone and rarely looks at hers, so she is seriously an anti-phone kind of person, and it seems like she just doesn't like having any kind of alerts on her phone. To top it all off, she has major sleep problems and will have high levels of anxiety. This makes things harder too because she is easily sleep deprived and can get stressed out very easily because of that. As for me, I rarely get bothered by things, and my sensitivity is more around how my partner feels. I have trouble creating boundaries between her emotions and my own. I generally want to make my partners happy, so it's tough for me personally when they are annoyed at something. As you can see, none of these things are huge issues, and with all this in mind, she doesn't throw some massive temper tantrum, but she is visibly annoyed, and it can bring in this negative energy that sometimes makes things feel more serious than they really need to be. I have been in relationships where the day-to-day felt much more lighter and much more carefree and easier to enjoy altogether. This one though feels much more tiptoeing around, not sure what will upset her next. And while it's not toxic, it is just small yet frequent reactions that seem to be wearing me down, and it makes me feel like I can't relax over the long term. What should I do? It sounds like your significant other has a really big issue with communicating when she's frustrated, because at the moment you're kind of just left scratching your head, walking on eggshells constantly, trying to figure out what you're doing wrong. Like, you can see that she's visibly upset, she's getting annoyed, she's getting frustrated, but you have no clue what's going on. So I don't think this is really a you problem, because there's no way you could just read her mind and know what's going on. She needs to communicate better. Otherwise, this is just completely unfair for you. So hopefully the two of you can work together and find some kind of common ground on communicating better with each other, because it's unfair for you to have to deal with this kind of negative energy and not know exactly what you did wrong. That's unfair, that's very toxic, and hopefully that can change for the better. Today I messed up by getting a nose piercing, and now my family hates my boyfriend, and I'm kind of at a loss of what to do. So I've been with my boyfriend for a little over a year. I told my parents about him around the 1-year mark. I hesitated to tell them about him, as they have shown less interest and enthusiasm with every boyfriend I've had since the first one when I was 16. When I did tell them, my dad just said, "That's nice," and my mom gave me the silent treatment for the rest of the day. Perceiving their apathy, I decided not to push it. In the weeks that followed, if his name ever came up again, my dad would give short but polite answers, and my mom would just shut down again. This past Friday night, I went to visit my parents for the first time in a few weeks. Since the last time I had seen them, I got a nose piercing. As soon as my mom noticed it on my face, she went cold and gave me the silent treatment for the rest of the night, refusing to speak or even look at me. I half expected this, since she has reacted this this way with all my other piercings and tattoos. But I am old enough, and it has happened so many times now, I thought she would have been over it by now. And it's honestly just really distressing to see that this is not the case. Saturday morning, my boyfriend was supposed to come over for brunch and meet my family for the first time. I was so hurt, embarrassed, and nervous of my mother's behavior towards me that I asked him not to come anymore. I didn't know how she would act around him, and I didn't want to add any tension to the situation or for him to see my dysfunctional relationship with my mom. This is where I completely messed up though. I said this to my boyfriend over text and in a way that wasn't very direct. Mostly, I think I was trying to warn him and just to vent. He responded in an understanding and supportive way, but at no point did he or I explicitly state that he would not be coming over. Early on Saturday, I had not heard from him, and when my dad asked for an ETA, I didn't know what was going on. I heard from him late in the morning, probably he had just woken up. He is a night owl and he works nights, so his day starts kinda late. He said that he was under the impression that he wasn't coming. At that point, it was too late, since he lives kind of far away and my parents were going to be out in the afternoon. I didn't know what to say, so I messed up again and I just lied. I told them that he woke up not feeling well and wasn't going to be able to make it. My mom was mad, saying that he had wasted her time for making her plan the morning around him and for not telling me sooner that he wouldn't be coming. At this point, I was so done with everything, and after brunch, I just left and gave no further explanation. When I told my boyfriend what happened, he was understanding, but worried that he disappointed my family while also being concerned about what they think of him now. He said he's not mad at me because he understands complicated family relationships, but I can tell he is upset about the situation in general, and honestly, who wouldn't be? I admit it was fully my mistake and that I will make it right by telling them the truth, even though I'm still trying to figure out how to best do that. I feel extra sad as well because my grandma and brother were present, and they have shown genuine excitement to meet him from the beginning. I feel disappointed in the way that I handled the situation with my parents, as well as just frustrated with my mom's behavior and how much it has a hold on me, and just the fact that it stressed me out so much that I'm just trying to make things right by my boyfriend. So who knows how I'm gonna get that going. I think there's a bigger underlying issue going on here. Sure, it really sucks that your parents are kind of antagonistic towards your boyfriend, but I think you need to tell your parents exactly how you feel. Maybe go to your mom and be like, hey, I'm really embarrassed by the way you treat me, and I really don't like the fact that you give me the silent treatment and shut down. Like, this is really ridiculous. You don't even feel comfortable bringing your boyfriend around them, and you had to wait until the year mark just to tell them about it. Like, that's a bigger issue than anything else. So I think having an honest conversation with them, regardless of if they get offended or not, will do everybody a lot of good, because then at least you can know where everybody stands, even if your mom and dad don't stand with you and your boyfriend. Today, I messed up by keeping all of my savings in silver, only for it all to get stolen away like an idiot, and I honestly feel pretty stupid. Here's what happened. So for the last 6 years, I have saved every dollar I've made from working and reinvested in silver. I know that sounds stupid, but unlike a bank account, physical currency like gold and silver hold up against inflation. Plus, I liked feeling like a pirate. During COVID, I sold most of it when it was around $30 and reinvested more when it was around $20. In total, I had around $15,000 in silver ounces. This was really good for me because if I didn't have the money locked somewhere, I was terrified I was going to be like my parents and spend it all. For a little background history, my mom and my dad never graduated high school. They were extremely terrible to me throughout my childhood. They would spend every dollar we had on cigarettes and chew. I would go several days only eating takeout, but for them, at least they had their stuff. We lived paycheck to paycheck and it was awful. Well, I took a gap year from college. I'm beginning to apply and I got accepted to a smaller school. I went through the steps with financial aid and I got around $5,000 in grants. And I was so excited. The tuition is around $18,000, including meal tickets, room and board, and classes. I was so glad that I had saved my money in silver. After all, I had around 800 ounces of it, but everything changed overnight. I went to my garage where it's usually kept, and it was all gone. I had not checked on it for a few months because of the current economy that we're in. So at first, I thought what all of you are probably thinking as well. My parents must have done this, right? Well, they would have posted something on social media about it, and my siblings would have told me something as well. So there's no way they would have just magically found 15 grand in silver and not said something about it. My dad does leave things unlocked on occasion. My guess is that someone went into the garage and stole them without knowing what they were worth. Or they did know and they just hit the jackpot. I am so angry, hurt, and incredibly sad. I yelled at my dad for the first worst time in my life today, and I feel bad about it already. But we don't have any cameras, which really would have helped with this situation. And worst of all, I didn't have the silver insured, so I have no way of getting it back. This was honestly my way to get out of this generational trauma that my family pushed onto me. I was gonna be different. I was gonna get my future kids their birthday presents. I wasn't gonna tell my kids Santa Claus forgot to come along this year. This sets me back so freaking much, and I don't know if I can recover from it. I'm so distraught. Years of saving just went right down the drain. And I did this in such a stupid manner. I should have stored it in a bank vault or something like that. But instead, I trusted my family to keep the door locked. I mean, was that seriously too much to ask? For them to simply lock the door and keep my belongings safe? I forgave all of their trauma and abuse over the years, and I was a pushover my entire life. But this was my future, and they just completely destroyed it. I feel so bad for the original poster, and they're right. They should have definitely put that especially in a bank vault. Leaving it to your family who is very toxic and treated you like garbage throughout your entire childhood was a massive miscalculation. And unfortunately, this is a very expensive lesson to learn. And I know that this original poster is saying, no, there's no way my family took it. But based on what you've described, I would really not put it past them to take that, cash it in, and pay off their debts. I mean, they sound like absolutely terrible people. At the end of the day, though, this is unfortunately the original poster's fault. I mean, they left it unguarded in the open in some shed. I mean, this was a disaster waiting to happen. So hopefully, next time you're able to keep your silver in a safer place than your parents' garage, because obviously they are not going to be responsible about it. And if anything, you're just going to lose more money. My brother-in-law's dog destroys my home office, causing $12,000 in damages, and he refuses to pay a single cent towards fixing any of it. And I honestly don't know what to do. So my husband, my brother-in-law, and his girlfriend of 6 years were over to hang out the other night. All was well, and we had a few drinks. We watched a few movies, played some music, and had a lot of fun. Eventually, we all hit the sack and went to bed. My brother-in-law has a husky that isn't exactly trained and is known to tear up other stuff if she isn't being watched. And this is all because she has really bad separation anxiety. So to help mitigate that issue, my brother-in-law brought a crate so that she could sleep in it and wouldn't mess anything up. Fast forward to the next morning, and I wake up to this really weird smell in the house. I get up to investigate, and I walk downstairs to see that my brother-in-law and his girlfriend are still asleep, but the dog isn't in the crate. Once I saw this, I immediately had an awful fear in my gut. And let me just say, God only knew how terrible of a day I was about to have. I continue to track down the smell, fearing that it might be a gas leak or something like that, only to find out it's coming from my home office. I open the door and the stench punches me in the face. My brother-in-law put his dog in my home office, and literally every single object in my room is destroyed. First, let me describe the smell that was in the air. It was the smell of my work laptop from where the dog punctured the laptop battery, causing this terrible odor. He literally mangled the laptop into 8 different pieces, making it completely unsalvageable. This was a $3,000 Windows laptop, but it only continues to get worse. My personal laptop that was worth about $1,000. This MacBook was mangled to a similar effect. My personal PC for gaming was also destroyed. My personal iMac, as well as multiple 4K monitors, all destroyed as well. On top of that, my PS5, my Xbox Series X, my Nintendo Switch, my Xbox 360, my PS4 and PS3, all of them were mangled. And it didn't stop there. My furniture in the room, including my computer desk and my computer chair, along with the leather reclining couch and a wooden TV stand, all destroyed. When I looked around the room, I noticed even the drywalls and the windows were just mangled. It had even gone as far as destroying the closet doors and many other things in my office, either having chew marks, scratch marks, or just being straight up taken apart. There's also a TV that's worth about $2,000 laying face down on the ground with the screen shattered. And I feel like this is only the tip of the iceberg. So far with what I've totaled, it comes out to about $12,000 worth of damages. I am still far from calculating all of the damages. I mean, just imagine if your $13,000 to $15,000 car was on fire one morning, because that's how I felt walking into this room. I immediately open a window, grab anything I can think of that may have had its batteries popped by this stupid dog, or anything else that might be harmful to breathe into, and I put it in trash bags. I take them all outside and I put them into an empty shed. I go back in with tears streaming down my face, and I go wake up my husband. I can barely barely even explain to him what's happening, and I literally just drag him to my office. My husband almost immediately understands exactly what happened. He immediately goes out into the living room where my brother-in-law and his girlfriend are sleeping and starts yelling at his brother. My brother literally has no idea what's going on. He apparently didn't hear all the destruction that was happening in my office last night. He says that his dog wouldn't stop whining in the crate, so instead of just letting it out of the crate and letting it sleep on the couch with him, he just shut the door to my office and went back to sleep. After my husband stopped screaming, I stopped crying. We walked into the office and I showed him what his dog did. My husband popped the question, "When are you going to pay us back for all of this?" But my brother-in-law just responded by saying, what do you mean?" At this point, all of my sadness turned into rage. I asked him to repeat himself and to think carefully before he did. He had the audacity to actually repeat himself, and this time he made sure to add his reasoning. "It's not my fault you had so many expensive things and that you decide to keep them all in one room." My brother-in-law, for context, makes about $100,000 a year as an electrical engineer. He absolutely can't afford to pay me back for all the damages to my home and office. He outright refused any responsibility and told me he has no plans to repay me whatsoever. Again, because it was my choice to buy all these things and to keep them all in one room. My husband immediately cussed him out and told him to leave our home, which he did. His girlfriend stayed back because she drove a different car, and she said she couldn't believe what she heard him say. And after just staying for about an hour, she said that she wasn't going back home, and she left to go stay back at her mom's house. At this point, I don't know what to do. We already called the police to come file a police report, but we haven't decided whether or not we're going to press charges in this regard. We're trying to work out something with him, but he simply doesn't want to listen, and he refuses to listen to anything that we have to say to him. I had no parents growing up, no one to support me. In fact, 8 years ago, I was homeless, sleeping on park benches, and have since built a life as a computer engineer that allowed for me to have all the things that I owned. Also, someone is going to have to pay the $3,000 for my company laptop. My husband is at the point where he said that until his brother comes to his senses, he doesn't have a brother anymore. His girlfriend apparently still hasn't returned home, and it's been 3 days now. I'm more than certain he hasn't bothered to take his dog to the veterinarian, and I'm more than certain that his dog will probably not live trying to pass through its system all of the pieces of electronics that it ate. It quite literally ate a portion of my work laptop's motherboard and ate portions of the glass on one of my monitor screens. I'm absolutely willing to take my brother-in-law to court. The one thing that his dog didn't manage to destroy was my 1080p security camera, decked out with some fantastic night vision that was placed in the best area in the room to cover as much field of view as possible. I have picture-perfect footage of him opening the door, shutting his dog in my office. Watching the preceding footages is like watching a car crash. I truly believe that if this footage was shown to a jury, that he would have no grounds to stand on. I have the footage saved on multiple devices. Would it also make sense to try and claim anything under house insurance? Or am I just being stupid? I've been completely out of it for the past 3 days. Barely sleeping, barely eating, constantly crying, wanting to punch holes in the walls. I'm truly convinced that my brother-in-law thinks that if he just ignores me, the problem will just go away. So we are completely at a crossroads, and I honestly don't know what to do. Your brother-in-law is about to learn the hard way that property damage is something that is very serious. So honestly, I would go back to him one more time and say, hey, let's work this out. Just pay for the stuff that your dog destroyed and help us replace it, and there won't be any issues. This will literally be the end of it. But if he's going to be unreasonable in the way that you're describing, then I think it's time to lawyer up and take this another step further, because this is unacceptable. And in my opinion, this guy is 100% at fault. An entitled Karen demands a refund on her food, claiming that it's incorrect, despite the fact that there was nothing wrong with it. Things got so weird that she said she was going to report me to my manager, claiming that I was denying her service, which is honestly just absolutely ridiculous. Here's what happened. I'm a manager at one of the largest fast food chains in Australia, and tonight we had one of our regular Karens come through our line. Now, when I say she complains about something literally every single time she comes in, no matter what, I really mean it. Every time I see her, either in our drive-thru or on the front counter, I always make sure to make her order perfect, just to see if she complains, and sure enough, every time she does. Usually, if there is nothing to complain about, she finds something ridiculous that she just makes up on the spot, saying something like, "My chips are too salty," even though I know for a fact the chips are just fine. Well, Well, as you could probably guess, the same thing happened tonight. She ordered her family meal through the drive-thru, and I saw her walking into the restaurant with a bag, and I thought, oh boy, here we go again. She slams the bag on the counter, and I greeted her with a warm smile and said, hello, what seems to be the problem this time? I honestly couldn't help myself because she knows that we don't like her, and she just goes into it and says, I asked for one of my burgers, she had 4 in total, to have no mayo, and it has some on there, and my daughter won't eat it. I said, sure, can I take a look real quick? She grabs the 3 burgers in there that could possibly have mayo, and she asked for 2 of them without mayo, and she opened up all 3 of them, and there is not a single trace of mayo on either of them. I just looked at her, and while she was getting red in the face, she says, well, it was there before. My daughters won't eat it. And I said to her, well, if you can show me where the mayo was on this burger, I would be happy to replace it for you. And she just goes on to say, you know what? Just give me my money back. And I said, sure, that's fine. We could do that. As she stormed off to her car to get her purse, she shouted across the restaurant and said, I'll be reporting you. She returned back into the restaurant, and I asked her what I've done to be reported. And she said, you refused to replace my meal. And I said, no, I didn't. I'd be happy to replace the meal if there was actually something wrong with it, but I could see no evidence to support your claim. So instead, I'm happy to process a refund if you're unhappy with your purchase. I asked her for the receipt so I could refund the total, and as I'm putting through the refund, she can see on the screen what is being put in, and she asked for a large dinner bundle, but as I put the bundle through, it defaults to a small, and as I was about to change it to a large, she chimes in and says, it was actually a large, and I held up her receipt and I said, I know, I can read. I refunded her and called out as she stormed off, have a great night. Hopefully this entitled Karen never comes back, but you know what? She probably will. There's some people you literally just cannot make happy. You could do everything perfectly and they're still gonna find something to complain about. And if they don't have anything, they're just gonna make it up, like claiming there's mayonnaise on their burger when there's definitely not. The original poster has gone on to say that they plan on speaking with the restaurant manager tomorrow, and they're gonna be looking into getting this lady banned from the store, which is honestly my suggestion. This lady literally makes your lives a living nightmare, and I'm honestly really impressed that you decided to put up with this for this long. So hopefully this lady does get banned, because her behavior is absolutely atrocious, and no one should ever have to put up with that. An entitled angry dad freaks out when he assumes that I didn't give his little kid any candy while they were trick-or-treating, and I've honestly never been more scared in my life. Here's what happened. So this year, I went all out decorating my yard and house for Halloween for the first time, really. It's my first house, and I was super excited about trick-or-treating, and I decided to go big. I dressed up, handed out goodie bags, and played spooky music. I just wanted to have fun on my favorite night of the year, and help all the kids have fun too. I even made goodie bags that included some stickers, a small toy, 3 fun-size M&Ms, and a full-size candy bar. I drew something cute on each goodie bag, and had a lot of fun with the whole thing. About an hour into trick-or-treating, a family pulls up on a trailer with an American flag as well as a very popular politician's flag waving behind it, all being pulled by a 4-wheeler. Several kids came barreling out and ran up to my door. The first few kids were clearly too old to be trick-or-treating, but I gave them a bag anyway, because they had a couple of younger kids with them, probably 7 or 9 years old, and they all just quickly ran off. Then, trailing behind the other kids that were already back to the 4-wheeler, the littlest one approached, who was about 5 or 6 years old, and absolutely as cute as can be. I asked if she was having fun, and told her how much I loved her costume, and I ended up giving her a bag. She started walking back down the driveway when the dad loudly screamed, I hear this one's got full-size candy bars. Let me see. And snatched the bag right out of the little girl's hands. He started to walk away and yelled, what? No way, we got ripped off, and turned around angrily and started up the driveway back towards my house. I instantly felt sick. Blood rushed to my ears. My heart was pounding, and I steadied myself for an angry confrontation. I was legitimately scared for a second. I decided right then I was going to stand my ground, even though this man was big and scary. Well, he apparently didn't see the full-size bar at the bottom of the bag, because he eventually yelled, oh wait, there it is, lucky for them, and turned around, hopped on the 4-wheeler, and then left. Now, I'm not one to usually do this, but I almost cried. I wasn't even sure why. Maybe the adrenaline that filled me when I saw him angrily walking back toward my house. Maybe because he totally ruined that experience for that little girl, or the relief that he wasn't coming for me. Maybe all those things and then some. But I was shaking so bad that I had to go inside and collect myself before going back out. I still can't get it out of my mind. It really did did put a damper on the rest of the night, and I've decided that was the one and only time I'll be doing this. This world is so scary, and people are so entitled that doing something kind still gets you some kind of threat. I just hope that little girl is okay. But I do want to add one more thing that did make me feel a little bit better. Toward the end of the night, I heard a small voice exclaim from somewhere down the street,
"Ooh, stickers!"
And that ended up bringing me back, and it helped me remember why I love doing this in the first place. The dad you're describing sounds absolutely awful. He actually went through his kid's bag, ripped it out of her hands, and said, oh, they don't have the full-size candy bar like everybody else. And he actually had the audacity to begin marching back up to that house to do God knows what. I mean, what was he really planning to do once he got back up there? Scream at this lady and demand more candy? I mean, how ridiculous can you get? He sounds like a terrible parent, to be completely honest. But I honestly don't think that should take away from your joy of celebrating Halloween. So hopefully you're able to go all out next year and still enjoy yourself, regardless of whatever entitled adults might be lurking around the corner, trying to ruin the experience for everybody else. An entitled Karen comes up to my house and demands that I give her kids candy, despite the fact that I was not giving out candy because my front porch light was very clearly off. Here's what happened. So I had surgery last week that involved the cutting of some of my abdominal muscles, and I'm still not able to move around much. On top of this, I was the only one home as my sister is going to consultations for her upcoming surgery. As a result of these factors, my family decided we weren't going to really celebrate Halloween this year. We didn't put up decorations, we didn't buy candy, and we had our porch light off to indicate that there was no candy here to all the children running about. Overall, things were going well, and we assumed that people were catching the hint in knowing that we were not giving away candy. But then 7:45 rolls around when I hear a knock at the door. I, of course, ignore it. But not only do they knock again, but they also ring the doorbell. At this point, my pain meds were wearing off, and I was planning to just not move till I went to bed, so I wouldn't have to redose. But that would also mean at the time that I'm short-tempered. After listening to more knocking at my door, I decide that these kids need some education, and I get up. The woman is actually peeking in our front window and gets the pleasure of watching me hobble down the hall just to unlock the door. I open the door with a scowl, and I say straight up, no lights means no candy. And once I said this, the kids looked absolutely disappointed, and the mom just scowled at me. Then this entitled mother says,
"Come on, surely you have some candy for my kids."
but I just look at her and say, no, I don't. Get off my porch. To which this entitled mom actually had the audacity to say,
"Well, why not?"
and at that point, I just shut the door on them. Now at this point, I was hoping this would be the end of it, but this entitled mother decided to keep things going as she rang my doorbell again and again, as well as knocked on my door repeatedly, alternating between that and ringing my doorbell. I hadn't left the door because I had to sit down before I moved again, and our window is thin. I heard her shouting through the window,
"Whatever, this holiday is for Satan worshippers anyway. The least people could do is give us some candy for tolerating it."
After that, she left my porch, and I had to take more pain medications to handle the spasms I was experiencing from laughing so hard. Honestly, what kind of logic does this woman think the world runs on? It was so ridiculous, and it made my night just a little bit better. So for those of you who don't live in America, the common rule that really is kind of across the board is that if you don't have your lights on or any decorations out, then you're not giving away candy. That's like a clear-cut way to say, no, don't go to my house. So the fact that this entitled mother completely ignored that just to go up to this house that very clearly was not participating in this holiday to try and shake them down for candy or something is just really, really stupid. And it's not like she didn't know what she was doing. Like, there's no way she doesn't know that rule growing up, especially if she's trick-or-treating with her kids later in life. And worst of all, she doesn't even like this holiday. She claims that it's just for a bunch of Satan worshippers, which is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But regardless, at least the original poster was able to get a good laugh out of it, because that entitled mother was being absolutely ridiculous. And hopefully next year when she goes trick-or-treating with her kids, she'll remember that if the lights are off, then that means there's no candy to give out. My boyfriend broke up with me because I'm apparently always tired, stating that I've changed and that I'm too tired to do literally anything in our lives. So I've been dating my boyfriend for about a year now. When we first started dating, I was working one job as a nanny and would work until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Recently, I decided I wanted to move to a better apartment, so I picked up a second job, and now I get off at about 6 o'clock at night. My boyfriend and I used to go to dinner or a movie a couple of times a week. We really enjoyed going out to have a nice dinner, and he would always pick such a nice restaurant, and we would get dressed up for it and everything. He makes such good money as a hardware engineer, and I obviously do not make as much as he does, but I like having my own money and working my own job. He has repeatedly told me he wants me to be a stay-at-home girlfriend, but that is just too risky for me, and it's not something that I want to do. Anyway, after working 2 jobs, around 65 hours a week, I'm pretty tired day to day. His schedule is more predictable, and he usually gets off at about 4:30 in the afternoon, and he starts work pretty early. I start my work pretty early as well, but I don't usually get back to my place until 7 o'clock at night, and if we were going to go out, I'd have to take some time to get ready. We probably wouldn't eat dinner until about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and I would have to be in bed by 10 since I wake up at 4:30 in the morning just to get ready for work. So because of that, I asked him if we could save going to a nice restaurant for Saturday nights, to which he agreed. I told him that we would still see each other the same amount of time, but instead of going out, we would stay in and cook, or just watch a movie. It was working for a while until it all fell apart last week. We got into a bit of a fight because I had a headache after work and told him I was going to bed early instead of seeing him. I woke up to a long text message saying that I've changed. I'm always too tired for him and I'm never feeling good. He doesn't get to do what he wants anymore because we are always at my house instead of over at his. He even accused me of seeing other people instead of working at the second job. He told me we were through unless I can show him that he's still important to me, demanding that I make time for him. In my eyes, nothing has really changed, except that we don't go out for dinner as much as we used to. We still spend plenty of time with each other, so I don't know what is happening. I'm really upset, and I don't know what to do here. What would you all do if you were in my position? Should I just move on? I mean, even though we've only been together for a year, I have a really strong feeling for him. It's hard to just let it go. What should I do? I think the original poster needs to look at their schedule. They work 65 hours a week. I think you need to take a step back and maybe move back to a normal 40-hour work week, or try and find a job that has a higher pay or something. This is only going to cause you to burn out and really make mistakes in your life. So in some ways, I can kind of understand where your boyfriend is coming from. But on the other end of it, it sounds like he really needs to be more accommodating. Like your circumstances have changed. You had to start working 2 jobs just to make things work out in your life. So I think if anything, maybe making steps to have some kind of compromise where you can still work and save up for your apartment while also dedicating time to your relationship would probably benefit you across the board, because from the sounds of it, it doesn't look like things are going well. So maybe a little bit of change is in order just to try and get things back on track. My crazy entitled teacher cuts the tube of my insulin pump right in the middle of class, thinking that I'm listening to music through secret headphones that I was hiding. And I've honestly never been more frightened when my mom rushed to the school with my life-saving medicine and put my crazy teacher back in her place. Here's what happened. So this happened when I was in middle school. You know, back in the days of wired headphones. So about 2011 or something like that. While I'm currently 24 years old, I've had type 1 diabetes since I was about 4 years old, and I use a continuous glucose monitor and an insulin pump. I had an IEP, so all my teachers were told about it, and that I would need my insulin pump in class, while also telling them that it might make some noise, and I might have to pull it out of my pocket and mess with it if I needed insulin, or I might need to drink a juice pouch or something like that, and I was able to do so at my discretion. We had one teacher who was a complete you-know-what for no reason. She was notorious for making kids cry during presentations. She even told one girl who wanted to be a doctor to find a cure for cancer, all because her little sister had childhood cancer, that she would need to actually be smart in the first place in order to do that. And she said this all while chuckling to herself. I mean, what kind of teacher would do that? Let a kid dream. We were only 12 years old. As you can imagine, she was also at war with technology. And on a side note, these days I use my phone to check my glucose and give myself more insulin. I can't imagine being a kid today and dealing with a teacher like that when the lines are blurred and your smartphone is actually a life-saving medical device. But anyway, if you're not familiar with insulin pumps, the kind I use has a little tube that connects the pump, which has the insulin, to my body, which needs the insulin. This teacher also liked to be weirdly obtuse about things. Instead of being like other teachers and simply saying something like, "No cell phones in class, put it on my desk," which would allow me to remind them that it's an insulin pump, and then they would usually respond by saying, "Oh, that's right, my bad." She would instead try and talk abstractly about what she wanted to happen while walking around the room. So this particular day, she kept alluding to students listening to music in class, stating that you should be careful with what you do do because she can see it, stating that us kids might think we're sneaky, but adults know what we're up to. I obviously wasn't listening to music, so I figured she'd seen someone with headphones on in the room or something like that. And the next thing I knew, she had snuck up behind me with scissors. It took me a good moment to realize what happened exactly, because I was honestly astonished and completely in shock that she would do something so destructive and so absolutely toxic. And while I was used to teachers thinking I had a cell phone or getting upset about my pump beeping during an exam, until that day, no one had ever touched it before, much less taken a pair of scissors and cut my life-sustaining tube, which is exactly what she did. I was actually sitting with my mouth agape, and she turned to me, now that she was in front of the class again, and said something along the lines of, "Well, original poster, care to share with the class what tunes are more important than listening?" I'd at this point put together that she thought I was listening to music, and she thought that she cut my headphone wires in half. I replied by saying, "The only thing I'm listening to are just my thoughts while I've still got any, since that was my insulin pump that you just cut in half." She had to let me go to my locker to get my cell phone to call my mom to bring me a new infusion set, and while she was speeding to the school for me, I just waited in the front office for her. She worked from home and drove like crazy to get here, and when I tell you that my mom was angry, she was absolutely furious, and I don't ever want to see her that angry again in my life. It took 10 years off of my lifespan, and I wasn't even in trouble. When my mom showed up, I was sitting in the office waiting for her. I think it took her like 15 minutes to get there post phone call. She asked me if I was okay and checked out the damage that was done. I could obviously tell how angry she was, but not with me, obviously. She walked straight up to the receptionist and just asked where the teacher was, and they phoned the classroom and had the teacher come up to the office. The principal also came out. My mom then ripped her a new one, but she didn't yell, though I honestly think that made it more terrifying that she was very collected in this situation. I don't remember word for word, but basically she said that removing my insulin pump was a violation of my IEP, not to mention that it is a medical device and an extension of my body which is keeping me alive, and that she would have the audacity to damage life-saving medical equipment was not only reckless, but also a criminal act. My mom said that type 1 diabetes is no joke, and it can take lives, that she should count herself lucky she didn't damage the pump itself. My mom then explained how expensive these things are in the first place, and everything they had to do just to get one. My mom put the fear of God into these people, but in a way that they can't turn it on her and say that she's being disruptive. After that, she took me home for the rest of the day. Eventually, my teacher really did apologize to me. It wasn't too bad. We had a meeting with her, the principal, the assistant principal, and a lady from the special education office, plus me and my parents. She said she was sorry for her actions, and that she shouldn't have treated me that way, and she hopes I don't grow up to expect people to act like that towards me. She forgot I had an insulin pump, but I didn't feel like she was making an excuse. She was saying she should have been more mindful, and that it was her fault, and that I did nothing wrong. She also said I was very brave and calm in the face of adversity, stuff like that, and then she apologized to my mom and dad for frightening them for what she did. She then offered to pay for any cost for the damages that she caused, but my parents declined. They wanted all the teachers to get more education about kids with diabetes, and so the school nurse had somebody come in to specifically educate all the teachers in the school about this very thing. In the end, my parents did not sue the school or my teacher, and I unfortunately still had to be in her class. This was a tiny school and did a lot of things backwards. I'm honestly surprised that this teacher wasn't fired right on the spot. What she did could have been catastrophic, and I'm honestly blown away that she did not lose her job. But here's the thing, even if this student was listening to music, what gives her the right to cut the headphone wire? That's literally destruction of property. This lady actually thought that would be okay as a response. Like, all you have to do is see it, call the kid out on it, and write him up. That will literally solve all your problems. You don't sneak up with a pair of scissors and cut the wire just because you want to try and be weird. And I know exactly the type of teacher that the original poster is describing, where they are weird and abstract and they don't tell you exactly what they want, but they speak in circles as if you're supposed to understand them. So good for this original poster for staying calm in this kind of situation. I'm sure it wasn't easy, but at least you had your parents on your side who recognized how serious this situation was and put that entitled teacher back in their place. My partner is having really emotional outbursts, and I'm struggling to find any kind of solution, and I don't know what to do. The title says it all because I'm struggling to understand if my partner is being emotionally abusive. He's been through a lot of trauma in the past, and I try to be really sensitive and forgiving of the emotional outbursts outbursts, as well as anything else that might be going on. I'm just struggling to draw the line between misunderstanding and allowing space for trauma responses, as well as protecting myself from emotional outbursts, or at the very least, protecting my own emotional well-being when they're not doing well. When things are going good between us, they're really good. He can be the sweetest, most loving person in the world. He never puts me down and encourages me to step outside my comfort zone and do things that make me happy. Sometimes I can't truly believe how lucky I am to have such a sweet and sensitive person in my life. Then there are other times when something triggers them, and it's a whole storm of emotions that I don't want to deal with, and I don't know how to. For example, we went on vacation for the first time together, and our Airbnb was terrible and not as described at all. It was in a bad part of town, and I was feeling very unsafe. After a day in the Airbnb, we mutually agreed that it was a bad situation, and we coped by talking and making jokes about what we got ourselves into. At night, we booked a new Airbnb for the rest of the vacation, and we were set to leave the next day. We were still half complaining and half joking to each other to make the best of the situation, and I honestly thought we both went to sleep on decent terms. Not happy about the situation, but in it together and making the best of it. When we woke up, I was washing my face and getting ready for the day when my partner suddenly declares, "This is horrible. This whole vacation is a disaster." And he starts rapidly and sloppily packing his bags as fast as possible. He was huffing and puffing and storming around the Airbnb, stopping off to the car and clearing everything out, while I'm basically still in my PJs, not knowing what's going on. I later learned that we had to check out early, but he never communicated that to me. Also, we still had hours before checkout time. The way he rushed was completely unwarranted. I got him to calm down at certain points of the morning, but he basically stayed in that heightened emotional state for 5 whole hours. There was nowhere for us to go. I couldn't walk away and leave on my own because we were in a bad part of town with nowhere to go until we check into the next Airbnb. So he's basically just sitting there super anxious and complaining in a public coffee shop. He's having what we can only describe as an adult temper tantrum, and nothing is getting through to him. I forget to mention, but we also have his dog with us. Something triggered the dog, causing it to bark and act up, and he just screams a swear word and storms off somewhere into the neighborhood with the dog. My nervous system is fried at this point, and I'm literally crying alone in a coffee shop, waiting for them to come back. After blowups like these happen, I'm left feeling super confused, emotionally, and feeling insecure about the relationship. I feel like I do a lot to prevent these outbursts from happening, but I just can't predict their moods. Another example is that their internet went out before an important Zoom call that they had to be on. They had another full-blown adult temper tantrum before the call. He was so flustered that he accidentally dropped his phone and then purposefully kicked it, screaming at their email, cursing the phone that wouldn't call in. I offered a solution by connecting my work computer to my hotspot so they could sign into Zoom, but they were too worked up to type in their password correctly, so they banged their fists on the table multiple times and jammed the keys of my work computer a little too harshly for my liking. They jumped up and down on the floor in frustration, with more cursing and more banging, speeding around the apartment in a huff. The tantrum only lasted about 5 minutes, but I was close to a full-blown crying panic attack. I'm an overly sensitive person in a lot of ways. I get overstimulated very easily, and I'm also emotionally sensitive. So even though their blowups are very rarely directed at me, being around the blowups affect me greatly and take me hours, if not days, to recover. So as you can see, there is a lot going on, but I'm wondering if this counts as emotional abuse. It's not usually directed at me, and he never directly puts me down. I really am just not sure how to talk to him about this, or where I should draw the line. What should I do? In my opinion, I would absolutely call this emotional abuse. His outbursts are absolutely unacceptable. These are not normal, and he seriously needs some help. In my opinion, if you're afraid of your partner's emotional outbursts, then I'm pretty sure this is an emotionally abusive relationship, and it's something you really need to be aware of. They may not be directed at you now, but what is the game plan here if it does suddenly shift to you? This behavior needs to change, and no amount of excuses or accommodations on your end is going to change that. As a side note, the man in this story is 35 years old, so I find it hard to believe that there's any really good excuse to try and justify this behavior. I totally understand that people have trauma and they have mental health issues, but they are still responsible for managing what triggers them, as well as taking care of those issues in their life. So I think maybe looking into therapy of some kind so they can better manage their emotions would probably probably really go a long way. Regardless of what happens, hopefully it all works out, because from what you've described, this sounds like a really sketchy situation, and hopefully things are able to be worked out. I think that the woman I'm seeing might be a narcissist, and I don't know if I need to take these signs seriously or what I should do. I met this woman 3 months ago, and she is very, very beautiful. She's really tall, about 2 inches taller than me at 5'11", and when I go out with her, I notice a lot of people checking her out. We aren't in a relationship, but we have been intimate 4 times. After I met her, we immediately started texting each other for hours. We had a lot of chemistry immediately, and we started calling each other cute names. Because I'm younger, she would call me puppy, and we would have this cute talk back and forth over and over again, and it really was nice. At some point, she asked me if she thinks this will go on, asking if maybe we should text other people every so often, questioning whether or not we should be seeing each other so often. I asked her what was going on, to which she said in a very blunt way that she is afraid that she will get used to me very quickly and that she is then going to dump me. She talked about her past relationships and revealed that she ended her previous relationship because of that. She also asked me several times if I still like her as much as I did before, which leads me to believe that she doesn't think things will last. And when I say that yes, I like her as much as I did before, if not more, she says, well, it kind of feels forced. I low-key feel like we're past the honeymoon phase, and it doesn't feel as intense as before. She's very subtle when she talks, and not as dramatic, and even when she isn't very subtle, she uses a lot of words, so that what she says doesn't sound blunt. Another strange thing is that while she tries to come across as a good human, she sometimes drops that attitude altogether, and jokes about how bad she can be when she gets mad, saying stuff like, we haven't had an argument yet. You should see what I'm like when I'm mad. You'd run so fast. And sometimes she would talk about her past and tell me that she was totally a high school bully. When she talks about something bad that she has done in the past, she tries to make it sound like it wasn't a big deal, or she tries to sound like a person who acknowledges that what she did was bad, saying stuff like, I know that it was bad, but I got mad at my friend and I threw a stone at her, or something like that. And then she'll quickly return to her current attitude and say, oh, I've changed so much. I was just a kid. I'm so kind and caring now. And then she'll try to justify and prove that she's kind and caring now. As an example, I was hanging out with her, but I had had a bad day at work. I wasn't in the mood to have any kind of fun. So she said in a gentle voice, hey, it's okay. Nobody is happy all the time. Tell me what happened at work. And she gave me emotional support. And then she even kissed me just to make me feel better. Then 3 days ago, she uploaded her WhatsApp pictures. And it was a picture, and it was a quote from the Taylor Swift song that said, did you hear my covert narcissism that I disguised as altruism, a tale as old as time? I randomly Googled these words, and it turns out it's from the Taylor Swift song. But if you put all these little pieces together, I just don't know what to think. And I'm starting to worry that there's something a little sinister and eerie about her. She does seem to be a little self-centered in general, but I'm not sure if she's a pathological narcissist or not. It's very subtle though, like she wears her red lipstick as soon as she wakes up, and then she talks about the guys who hit on her and says stuff like, that guy was cute, I was tempted, you've got competition. I'm just joking though. As soon as he talked to me, I reminded myself that I have you. I realize this may sound like a generic question, but should I take these signs seriously? Am I just reading too much into these little things? What should I do? I'm not sure if they're a narcissist. I mean, that's a big conclusion to make because there's a lot going on here. It does seem like she's kind of playing games though. It kind of sounds like she's been hurt a lot in the past, so she's trying to make sure that she's not going to get hurt again. But the signs are definitely there. I can kind of see where you're coming from. But aside from what you've mentioned, it doesn't seem like there's anything glaringly obvious that would shout that this lady's a narcissist. But I think either way, you can definitely proceed with caution and keep an eye out for any other things that might be going on. Because you know what? If the relationship is working out and if you're happy with her, then I honestly don't see anything wrong with seeing where this relationship goes. My wife hates every job she's had, and I'm not sure what to do anymore. My wife and I both work in corporate environments. She has nearly 10 years of experience and is quite good at what she does. We both make healthy salaries, so money is not really an issue. But at every company she's worked at, she eventually reaches a point where she just cannot continue. It affects her mental health, it drains her emotionally, and she stops feeling fulfilled. When I first met her, she was in a mid-entry level role, and she wasn't getting the recognition or compensation that she deserved. That company is kind of known for being toxic, so she decided to move on. The second company was somewhat of a startup, an exciting role where she got to wear many different hats, and she got to do a lot of different jobs. We've both come to learn that this means that she's going to be covering a lot of whatever comes up on short notice. It's going to be one fire drill after another. Her complaints started after a year or two, but she stuck it out for 3 years in total. But man, did it take a toll on her. Lots of venting, tears, and frustration. She got pigeonholed into work that she didn't want to do and felt there was a culture of higher-ups basically being untouchable and colleagues talking down to her and trying to deflect blame for mistakes. So again, just like her previous job, she ended up leaving. Now she's at her third job and she's about 6 months in. And last week, she told me that she hates it, that it's not what she expected. She doesn't know why she was hired because the type of work she was promised doesn't exist. Instead, she's being asked to be a glorified project manager, which she absolutely hates. Now, last night, after more tears and more venting, she said that she would quit tomorrow if she could. I literally didn't know what to say. I think I just kind of stared blankly at her because I couldn't believe this was happening for a third time. I can't really muster up the enthusiasm to give my pep talk for a third time. She mentioned that she wishes she could just be like me and like my job, but maybe my secret is that I don't actually love my job. I mean, it's fine. There are parts I like and dislike, and as I've progressed, I've felt like my need to care is much less now. I don't get paid to stress off the clock. I don't get wrapped up in politics or drama. I just kind of keep my head down and I chug along. And so I ask myself, why is it that she can't do the same? Has she really gotten unlucky with 3 jobs in a row? Does she have an unrealistic expectation of what a job is supposed to be? Very few people like their job, but it should be at least tolerable and not leave you looking like an emotionless zombie at the end of the day. It's affected our relationship because she wears her emotions on her sleeve. She can be fun and bubbly and goofy, or she can have a permanent unhappy look on her face and look like she hates everything around her. And I'm tired of the latter. Like I said at the beginning, money isn't an issue. If she needed to quit today for her mental health, I could support us well enough. And I've told her, do what makes you happy. Don't worry about your resume or disappointing the person who hired you. I will support her in no uncertain terms. But at the same time, I can't help but wonder what will be different the 4th time. How long until she realizes it's just another corporate structure with someone assigning her work with deadlines? What should I do? It really sounds like the corporate setting is just not a good fit for her, which is not unusual. Corporate America sucks. I can say that first and foremost. So maybe the option of getting out there and looking at something different outside of the corporate setting would probably do a lot of good for her. Maybe even going back to school and pursuing something else, because it really does suck when you're at a job that is terrible and you feel like your entire life is just being drained away by that place. And also, 3 jobs in 10 years is not that bad, to be completely honest. I think, in my opinion, we live in a society nowadays where staying at one company for your whole career is really rare. People hop between jobs, so it's not totally unusual to say, you know what, I'm moving to something else. And I honestly think your wife will be a lot happier doing something else because she's clearly unhappy, and I think the pattern is pretty clear that she needs to make a serious change, otherwise she's just going to be miserable. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.